Some kind of special operation is underway. Technicians are trying to connect to the cameras on site. Some strange people ask people in jackets if they brought money. They open a large suitcase completely stuffed with bills to show their quantity. They exchange suitcases. People in suits immediately check theirs. It turns out to contain several capsules filled with blue crystals. They report through an earpiece to take people out. They call operatives. The man in yellow asks if they understand that this is the maximum that can be sold for that kind of money. The second says that quite. He hopes that the transaction will go smoothly next time. The seller says that this is strange, because before they would have said that it is terrible how expensive, the man, sweating, says that his predecessor liked to pocket money. The operatives report that they are on the spot. The headquarters tells them to wait. A critical situation has arisen. The man doubtfully says that he heard that recently some madman was walking around the area and shaking money from the cartel. The other man says he doesn't know what he's talking about, but they'll probably go. The man's eyes turn red. He takes out a slightly forked tongue and says that he did not finish speaking with Mr. Cop, and then activates something in his hand. The headquarters understands that the criminals have activated the jammer, and they no longer have contact with the agents. He orders a rescue operation to be sent there immediately. The man in yellow looks at the beaten cop and asks if they really thought he wouldn't notice that the bills were marked, if he really looked like a fool. He lifts the victim by the hair and rhetorically asks that his smart toys have probably already leaked all the information, which means his friends will be here in 5 minutes. The man in the suit says that the guy must be very brave if he thinks their boss will let him get away with something like that. He points to the implant in the man's eye and says that everyone will be very happy if he brings such a thing with him. The man asks for a saw and says that he will simply cut him into as many pieces as he has killed. He says that he is not a cop and has not killed anyone. The man picks up the saw and asks who killed then, if not him. A man with a gun appears behind him and shoots the man in the back of the head, saying that he killed everyone. This man's people are in shock. They do not have time to react, but the bullets are already flying at them. Using the smart interface on the weapon, it is very convenient for the special agent to shoot enemies around the corner. Suddenly, a huge cyborg flies out from behind, ready to tear the agent to shreds. The operatives who arrived for the rescue operation are gradually making their way inside the building. They say that this is the police and for people to raise their hands. Everyone is aiming at the killer. They tell him to stand still, but he behaves as if he were at an old friendly meeting, saying that they haven't seen each other for so long. A man sits in a room. The radio reports that a squad of androids participating in an operation to eliminate terrorism will be awarded medals. Someone calls Mark Thompson. He comes out and hears someone complaining that he ruined someone's 6-year plan. Why is he even conducting an investigation if he was suspended from service? Mark wonders if they will even tell him thank you. He saved everyone. The head of that operation does not understand at all how he could act so recklessly. He didn't even have cover. Thompson smiles slyly and says that without him, they won't be able to find the cartel's sixes, no matter what they do. The boss doesn't like that he's also making fun of him, but he says that he knows how Mark can avoid prison. He looks interested. If he joins the KOP and trains agents there, he won't go to jail, and he'll probably be able to regain his position. He asks why he would want to do this, to which the boss says that he has no other choice. Mark is interested in which organization in the puppet court is offering him a position. The boss says that this is not an organization and points to the TV, where they continue to talk about androids and the fact that they decided not to give them awards. Is he really called to the Ministry of Defense? Some red-haired girl with glasses and a pistol is hiding in a shelter behind the wall. A man with a machine gun comes out at her. They silently look at each other, aiming their guns. He's out of ammunition, so he throws the machine gun, knocking the girl off her feet, and jumps on top to finish what he started with the knife. At this moment, someone knocks out the would-be killer's brains. Then a man in combat gear appears nearby. 2 snipers in similar suits inform the captain that Magnum has returned and brought another man with him. The girl enters a room filled with many other civilians. A serious-looking man asks if anyone else is left. Magnum says that there are no more signals from the search area. The scientist asks when the rescue squad will arrive, to which the commander says that this is them. The scientist is extremely indignant that now 3 people and 1 android are considered a rescue squad for several dozen people. The 2 soldiers giggle and say that, by the way, they have 2 more snipers stationed around the perimeter. The man shouts that the rebel army has hundreds of people and dozens of combat drones. The commander says that it is for this reason that Magnum is here, who at that moment reports that a group of hostile combat drones will be here in 4 minutes. He says that he will now show what one android is capable of and commands Meg to switch to Viper mode. He asks to set the distance. The commander says that the radius is 2 kilometers from the current location. The target is moving objects without identification marks. Everyone quickly leaves the building and gets into trucks to leave. Magnum jumps out at the drones and shoots them down one by one without stress until a powerful shot comes at him, knocking off most of his suit. In front of him is a giant combat robot for the destruction of all living things, which is clearly aimed at the android. Magnum scans the damage warnings and switches to unrestricted mode. He appears in a restored suit and with an energy blade directly in front of the destruction machine and heads to attack. A small group of helicopters flies in the sky above the destroyed city. The commander is looking for the android, but then he himself approaches him with a battle trophy. He says that 1 large drone, 5 medium drones, and 7 small ones were destroyed during the operation. A man is presenting the instant justice system. He shows 2 photographs. This is a suburb before and after the system was introduced there. The crime rate has decreased by 98%. Thanks to Aporinol, a new era of great revolution has begun. It is used as an alternative energy in the production of quantum computers, in the creation of medicines and new drugs. In all the places where crimes occurred, one can find traces of aporignol. It is not only about politics, corruption, and arbitrariness have penetrated into the police, the judicial system, the economy, and other areas of life. But who suffered most from the actions of a cartel that got out of control? That's right, the citizens of the country. Instant justice carried out by androids with artificial intelligence. When he first spoke about it, he thought that he would be burned like a witch at the stake. But after 3 years after the implementation of the instant justice system, the crime rate decreased by 70%, and the number of androids increased from 10 to 250. And the main thing is that this had practically no effect on the entire budget. It decreased by only 1/10 when compared with last year. In addition, taxes taken from the judicial system were used to improve and train androids, which made it possible to increase the budget in this area by 5 times. Also, instant justice is the best option for ensuring the safety of the citizens of the country, which can also solve the problem of corruption and shortage of police personnel. By choosing instant justice, they can protect their hope for the future. The filming ends and the team praises the vice president for his excellent performance. He asks what's going on with the results of the virtual vote. The assistant reports that 64% are in favor, 20% are against, and 16% abstain. The vice president notes that this, unfortunately, is not enough. If they want to completely replace the judicial system, they need even more votes. The assistant nods and says that she will definitely report this information to the planning team. A great view of a large building in the middle of an area that is heavily blazing with neon in the middle of the night. Someone wonders if this tank has really returned to the city, but Magnum says that he is not a tank model. He is a multidisciplinary android with strategic thinking. The boss says that Mark is too noisy, and also that this android, now his partner, can do whatever he wants with him. But Thompson asks what he should do with this tin can. Amid the lamentations of the suspended policeman, the chief is very happy that the inspector visited them. Now Mark understands why it got so cold. They were simply visited by a block of ice. And the girl responds by saying that Inspector Thompson has not changed at all. But no, he was demoted to lieutenant. Mark continues to say that he is better than everyone, unless of course they think this cop is better than him. The inspector says that this android is not a cop, and if he continues in the same spirit, he will earn not a temporary suspension from office, but dismissal. Thompson notes that the woman's strong point is not only secret operations, but also threats. She says that this is not a threat. She is now talking to him completely seriously. Suddenly, her face seems to change and tells him not to forget about those subordinates who died through his fault. Mark, suddenly replacing his humor with seriousness, tells her to repeat her words, because he might shoot her right there. The coordinator is sweating with excitement and tells them both to calm down. It's time to talk about business. Thompson says that all rights to investigate and conduct a trial have been transferred to the corporation. These types and her, the thick-headed one, will soon be removed. They are good at that. The girl says that even if she loses her job because of this system, it will be enough for her that all sorts of monsters will get what they deserve. Despite the words of the man behind the monitor, the couple continues their aggressive quarrel. Mark wonders what this tin can needs to be taught. She says that she sent him instructions. Let him read it himself. Then he will know everything. The Ministry of Defense is going to develop such androids that can work independently of the main war crime management system in various emergency situations. Thompson says the army has been rotten for a long time, so such an initiative sounds quite tempting. Currently, existing androids are connected to the main system, so they do not require training to function, but a unit used as a soldier must undergo it. She says if they complete the training in 3 months, then Mark will be reinstated. Thompson walks with the android along the corridor. He says that there is a bright future. The android says that there is plenty of light energy, and even if there are vision problems, they can help. Mark wants to tell the android to be quieter, but he doesn't even know his name, so he asks. He says that he is a strategic multifunctional android of the Magnum TVA-01 series made by Sky Caston. The guy understands that this will be difficult and sighs, asking what he was called in the troops. The android says that if the person means by call sign, then his name was Magnum, but the members of the platoon simply called Meg. Mark says that he understood everything, but the conversation with Magnum tired him, to which the android says that he will lower his audio range by 20%. Someone is calling Mark from behind, while he is dying because of the situation he finds himself in. Behind him is the policeman whom Mark recently saved from death on a mission. He is very grateful for saving his life. He says he thought it was the end when he screwed up, and he's sorry Thompson had to save him and get his hands dirty. Mark calms him down, saying that those bastards knew everything from the very beginning, and if not for this policeman, the mission would have ended. The man bows and thanks his savior for his kind words. He then leaves the building with his wife and daughter, which for some reason worries Thompson. Unexpectedly, Meg says that tears help release emotions and stabilize the state. The commander orders him to slam, abruptly changing his face. Magnum says it will be done and begins his long silence. They see information that androids are needed in Sector 8 to deal with the Poronyal, so the heroes go there. Although Meg says that those responsible are already involved. Thompson tells the android to follow him. They will begin training right away. A construction site. One day there will be a large building here, but not now. At the moment there is darkness here, illuminated by a couple of lanterns. Someone is jumping over the construction site fence at a rapid pace. The guy was sweating a lot after landing. Someone in front of his face, to his surprise, asks if it's hard for him. Lieutenant Thompson and Magnum appear in front of him. Mark says that if he does not run away, but immediately surrenders, then he promises to carry him parcels to prison. Instead, the guy pulls out a butterfly knife and lunges at Thompson, which he calmly dodges. After this, Mark, instantly becoming serious, takes the enemy into his grip. The caught man shouts that he is not from the cartel, he was just following them. Thompson asks him to be quiet, because if he dies now, then everyone else will go unpunished. He transfers it to Mag, saying that he needs to arrest the man and conduct a search. The android lets him know that he has accepted the command. Magnum instantly snaps the handcuffs that appear out of nowhere without hesitation. He identifies the offender as Pak San, 22 years old, who was previously sentenced to 3 months in prison for using violence and does not belong to the cartel. The man swears that he was just an ordinary extra and had almost nothing to do with what was happening. Thompson orders Puck to shut up and Mag to conduct the puppet trial. Magnum says that there is already a responsible android on the territory. Besides, he now only has basic settings, Mark says to carry out the order. He says he understands his sensors in his eyes are being reconfigured for better decision-making. Meg enters the instant justice system to get the necessary information from there. All three find themselves in the system. The criminal is in shock. The system offers to launch the systems of the judge, prosecutor, and lawyer. Meg and Mark agree. The system asks to register an instructor. Mark Thompson introduces himself. The system recommends the application of the special aporiginal law based on 25903 similar closed cases. The defendant is imprisoned for a period of 8 months for the illegal use of aporiginal. Mark understands that this is some kind of nonsense, and the defendant asks to reconsider the sentence. Not even 2 months have passed since he was released after the previous article. He says that his older brother is trading information. He will get them anything. Thompson realizes that he seems to have heard his name before, wondering if he is Pak Dan's brother by chance. Park San is very surprised that the police officer knows his brother. Thompson tells the guy to shut the door and asks Mag to hold the trial again. He says yes, since the verdict has not yet been rendered. Mark advises starting with obstructing the police's investigative actions. Magnum says he can't change the order because of his location in the Aporignal deal. Mark asks what the clarity level is, where it shows he was at the crime scene. Meg shows the video and says 52%. Thompson says 52% is not enough to prove whether they can overturn the claim. Meg says that of course they can. Then Mark says that the android should be tried again on suspicion of obstructing police investigations. After a retrial, the decision was replaced by 500 hours of community service and a fine. This time Mark agrees with the results of the trial, so the procedure is stopped. Then Thompson pins him down and tells him not to appear on cartel territory again. Otherwise, there will be a hole in his head, and then sends him to report everything to the KOP Center. The android asks why Mark did this. He says that this is the younger brother of his acquaintance, but Meg still won't understand. A car drives up to Thompson, he opens the door, and 2 people start talking to him. They ask who he is, to which he replies that he is just a pathetic investigator. The men are very surprised that they met Mark here, that he forgot here. Thompson asks what nonsense the man is spouting about a coworker he hasn't seen in a long time. With clenched teeth, he repeats the word colleague and says that Mark is a traitor, not a colleague. Thompson wonders how he can be considered trash by someone who was fired for accepting bribes. The man says he won't touch Mark because he's busy, but where did the suspect go? The main character calmly says that he left after the court verdict. The man explodes. This area is not in Mark's competence. How did he even dare to judge him? Thompson doesn't understand what he doesn't like. Since he caught the criminal, it means he also passed the sentence. The man asks his android Delta 9 to find the suspect, and he accepts the order. Mark wonders if his colleague's ears are blocked. He said that he has already figured it all out. Does he really not know about the rule of protection against reprosecution? The colleague says that the aporiginal law is harsh, but it is the law, and then gets ready to leave with his android. Mark repeats that he has already sorted everything out and tells the idiot to leave before he hits him. The colleague is very amused by this. He asks Thompson to try to hit him. Mark tells Meg to deal with that tin can, but he reports that the situation does not correspond to the conditions of the battle. Thompson is extremely surprised. He says that this is the boss's order. It must be carried out. Magnum says that he cannot fulfill it. A colleague laughs that even his car doesn't listen to Thompson. Good luck having fun together. Suddenly, Mark pulls out a gun and aims at Delta 9's head. Thompson tells the man to tell his friend not to move. Otherwise, he will turn him into a doll without a head. The man, without a drop of doubt, smiling slightly, says that Mark can shoot. The main character clenches his teeth in anger and asks if his colleague really thinks he's joking. Mark pulls the trigger, but his weapon seems to be jammed and unresponsive. Thompson examines his weapon and doesn't understand why the hell it won't fire. A colleague arrogantly remarks that this weapon and his android are of the same model. Didn't Mark really know that the pistol had a safety catch? Delta asks Thompson to get out of the way as they are in the service of the government. The man tells Delta 9 to arrest Mark on charges of obstructing an investigation. The android instantly rushes at the main character, but he manages to dodge. The giant machine turns around to deliver a blow that a person cannot manage to parry. At this moment, Magnum appears nearby and stops the other android's elbow with his palm. He reports that the obstacle to the investigation is over. The attack must be stopped. But the second investigator cannot be calmed down. He orders Delta 9 to destroy the android at the same time. Delta activates manager powers in combat mode, and so the huge body of the machine seems to become even larger, increasing the relief on the muscles that appear through the suit. The android makes a powerful push towards Magnum, knocking him down. The blow carries Maga some distance and slams her into a wall with some damage to her. The damaged Magnum sits near the damaged beam of the building. It is unknown whether he is conscious. A giant killing machine is slowly approaching the android to finish what it started. At the same time, Mark picks up some kind of board and hits Delta 9 on the back of the head, causing the piece of wood to crumble into dust. The car didn't even seem to feel any damage after the investigators' attack. Delta then grabs Thompson by the throat, who can't keep up with his automated reflexes. The android lifts a man into the air as he desperately tries to escape his deadly grip. 9 looks up at Mark and says that he is under arrest on a previous charge. Then Magnum appears behind him, stealthily sneaking up and jumping on the opponent's android. Meg delivers a flying kick to her opponent's head, causing him to lose his balance and release Thompson. Mark falls to the ground and travels some distance by inertia. Meg wonders if everything is okay with his commander, if he needs any help. Thompson staggers to his feet, holding his palm-printed throat, and asks if he looks like a man who's okay. At this moment, Delta 9 shamelessly wedges herself into the conversation with her blow, but Meg successfully dodges it. Magnum activates self-defense mode and launches the self-defense system. This helps him dodge another brutal blow from another android in time. However, the next blow is more successful, so Meg receives an uppercut right in the jaw. But the android does not receive serious damage from this, so it successfully blocks the next blow. He then swings his leg at superhuman speed to reach his opponent. Delta dodges the blow, narrowly missing his opponent's toe with his chin. Then it's Delta 9's turn. He prefers to throw a strong punch. But Magnum quickly ducks under the arm and lands a punch right underneath it. But the android was waiting for such a move, so he catches the hostile fist right in front of his nose. Meg pushes herself upward and begins performing a backflip to successfully land on the ground. Then, as expected, Magnum lands without taking any damage. Immediately after this, the androids decide not to respect the order and deliver their blows simultaneously. This causes the machines to collide fist to fist, negating the damage from both attacks. Tired of this circus, a colleague tells Delta to use his weapon. The android obediently activates the weapon mounts, which rip the sleeves of his shirt. Magnum is clearly unpleasantly surprised by this development of further events. Instead of an arm, Delta 9 now has a giant minigun that can hit anything that moves without any problems. He raises his gun and begins aggressively firing at the second android. Magnum moves so fast that he can even dodge bullets. Meg hides behind a reinforced concrete beam and wonders what he needs to do next. In parallel with this, Delta 9 is increasing the number of weapons on itself. He has a second Gatling gun and missile launchers all over his body. He tunes into Mag's signature and aims his new weapon at him. Seeing all this, Mark shouts for Meg to be careful, as this monster is pointing guns at him. Immediately after this, Delta fires a missile salvo into Magnum's hideout. Due to the explosion, it is not clear whether there was a hit or not. Delta 9 stands in a cloud of crumbs, breaking away from the buildings to reveal her opponent. Suddenly, something cuts his torso like butter with some kind of bladed weapon. It turns out to be Magnum, who used his laser blade. The eyes open. In front of them, there is a happy child and a woman. After that, they say goodbye and go somewhere, leaving the girl with her mother. Suddenly, there is an explosion that covers both girls headlong. Mark wakes up screaming from a nightmare about his lost family. He breathes loudly in a cold sweat, trying to return to the present. Thompson's room looks like a small gym, with Magnum standing in the corner. Meg wonders if the commander has woken up yet, because while he was sleeping, he received 12 calls. Mark opens the refrigerator and simultaneously asks who called. The android says that 11 times the head of the department and 1 time the manager of the Cat's Eye. At this moment, the subscriber, recorded by Thompson, calls like an old grump, the boss, in other words. He picks up the phone and asks what happened, to which the commander immediately calls him to his place. While Mark drinks the drink, the boss manages to ask how Thompson managed to do this on his first day. The main character orders the curtains to open to let in the rays of the sun, which they immediately do. He looks out the window and realizes that today is great weather to do some business. The vice president looks out the window and asks the man who arrived about someone. He says that it was Detective Mark Thompson, the former commander of the cartel investigation team, and he also had an android with him. The vice president does not understand how it happened that their android was torn into 2 parts. Mark's friend notes extremely sadly that everything was as he said. The vice president asks the man why he thinks they are putting on a show and hiding that an android of commensurate value was destroyed instead of filing a lawsuit. The man only bows and asks for forgiveness for everything that happened to the combat model. The big shot slowly turns around and tells Commander Sek that there will be no second chance. He continues his business and, as if by the way, asks if they found Joe Black. The commander says that they found a trace and almost reached its owner. The vice president says that what they are creating now is like a giant dam. If they now allow even the slightest crack, everything will go to hell. Czech says that he understands everything and will immediately begin his further duties. At the police station, the boss says that because of Thompson's antics, the boss himself will soon be trampled. Mark, as if nothing had happened, stands in front of the panicking boss and says that he is exaggerating. He shouts that Thompson is crazy. Why did he even get into a fight? The man shouts that the guy was the first to attack him. He simply had no choice. The boss's face changes to one of shame. He is glad that they did not file a lawsuit against them. Then the boss, as if nothing had happened, sends Mark to the criminal department. In this department, Mark finds his old friend Jack Hugh, whom he warmly greets. The guy is happy that they took down one of the cops, otherwise they always put a spoke in their wheels, and then asks if the guy next to him is one of them. Thompson tells Meg to introduce himself. He says hello and says his name is Meg. Jack whistles and says that this guy cannot be distinguished as a person as easily as a top-class android. Mark wonders if Magnum is really that cool. He asks if Thompson really doesn't know. He says that he knows absolutely nothing. He was just assigned to keep an eye on him. Hugh says that this machine has the combat power of an entire division. He tore tank armor like paper with his bare hands. Mark smiles and good-naturedly says that from now on this guy will open canned food for them, and then asks where his workplace is. Jack, slightly embarrassed, says that he is in charge of the 3rd group of detectives. He asks for forgiveness, saying that the boss asked to remove him from the law enforcement department. Mark says that he clearly has nothing to apologize for. Since they said it, it means he needs to. Hugh then says he forgot something and calls Hannah Lee over. A brown-eyed blonde in an orange suit responds from behind the table. She gets up from the table and slowly approaches Mark and his interlocutor. Hugh introduces Thompson to her as a legendary commander in the fight against organized crime. The girl salutes and says that her name is Hannah Lee. She is assigned to the 3rd team of detectives. Mark wonders if Jack knows that a team is not his style. He usually works alone. The girl is interested in why he rejects her candidacy, although he has not even had time to work with her yet. Thompson says he won't bow out, although after a moment of reflection, he admits that's exactly what he's doing. She says she has 5 licenses and graduated from the police academy with straight A's. Mark asks if all graduates are like this now. Hugh says that few people want to work in the police. He barely got her into it. He asks about her age and experience in investigations. She says that she is 23. She has little experience because she recently graduated, but this will not affect her work. Mark understands that it is useless to talk to her and asks Hugh to take her away from here. But the guy has already disappeared. Thompson doesn't understand where he went, and Jack stands behind the wall of the next office and exhales, saying that he relies on Mark. Meanwhile, Hannah, smiling widely, comes up to meet the android, who answers her question that his name is Meg. She asks him if he's really an android. He's so handsome that she doesn't regret joining the police. Mark grabs his head and realizes that he has a very difficult task ahead of him. A typical street at night, it's raining. Neon signs are shining everywhere. A man is standing over a woman who is trying to crawl away from him. What a hassle she is. Does she really take him for an idiot? A heavily made-up girl, with a fair amount of mascara running, asks for forgiveness. She understands that it is her fault. Behind this scene, another shadow of an unknown person appears, who has not yet shown his presence. This figure is wearing perfectly polished black shoes, not the most popular shoes for this place. The uninvited guest makes some sound, attracting the man's attention. He turns away from his victim and looks at the one who came, wondering what he needs. The creature, which looks like an anthropomorphic cybernetic crow in a cloak, asks if it is true that the man's name is George White. The bald man's plans clearly do not include an answer to such a question, so he responds by asking who came to him. Upon closer inspection, it turns out that it is just a thick suit with a mask. The unknown person is reaching for something in his jacket pocket. He shows a crumpled, worn-out photograph and asks if he recognizes the face of the man in it. George looks at the stranger and understands that whatever he came for, it is clearly something bad. He says that he needs to think and begins to take out the taser from behind his back. White suddenly takes out a taser and shoots at the troublemaker, striking him with a strong charge of electricity. The stranger falls into a puddle. George rejoices at his triumphant victory, and the girl uses her chance to escape. Then he notices her too, asking where she is going. He is not finished with her yet. A familiar voice comes from behind him. He says that he has one more question. White curses dirty and realizes that his health is now in serious danger. For some reason, he reaches into the inner pocket of his shirt. The unknown intruder lets out a loud cry and rushes forward towards the man. Black pulls out a gun to shoot him, but he grabs George by the arm. The stranger then squeezes the barrel of the gun with his synthetic hand, tearing it out of his opponent's hands. The guest throws the gun aside. An awkward silence ensues. Even in the heavy rain, you can see that Black is sweating as he tries to figure out a way out of such a sticky situation. The robo-hand makes a sharp jerk forward and grabs the disobedient man by the throat. The intruder then pins Joe to the ground with a loud crash. The stranger, who could very well be an android or cyborg, asks if Black saw the same thing. Even during the day, the neon signs in the city shine almost as brightly as the sun. At the edge of a gloomy alley, there is some kind of repair shop. Some old man, hearing the visitor, tells him to leave the thing, attach the card and leave, because he is a little busy now, so he will have to wait. Mark is surprised to notice that his friend is still alive, despite the fact that the chair under him will soon break. Without being distracted from his work, he says he knew Thompson would visit him soon. Mark turns his head, looking around the workshop and asks how the old man guessed. A gray-haired old man with a decent belly turns around and asks if he is really such a fool. He thought that he could make such a mess without anyone knowing about it. Mark says that he still has the same bad character. It seems that senile dementia has passed him by. Even the android was extremely perplexed by their communication. Thompson said that they came here to pick up something. The old man tells Mark to shut the door and asks what kind of tin can is next to him, rubbing his sore shoulders. Thompson turns to his partner, looking for damning evidence, and then asks how his acquaintance figured it out so quickly. He calls Mark a fool. Can't the guy feel at all that the car doesn't smell like a person? Then the old acquaintance says why they came here. Mark wouldn't have come just like that. Thompson says he came to pick up what he should have taken last time. The old man holds his lower back and recommends that Mark buy a water pistol and play cowboy. Those things are too expensive for him. Thompson, with a slight mockery in his voice, repeats that they, of course, are too expensive for him. Then the guy puts his bracelet on the payment terminal and pays for 2 weapons with a total price of $15,000. The old man is slightly surprised but begins to push open a door. An almost heavenly white light emanates from behind the reinforced metal door. Once it is fully opened, it becomes clear that inside there is a real paradise for a gunsmith. While the old man is opening the drawers, he says that on the new toys, the auto-aim system using the eyes has been improved by 20%. Their reaction speed has become much faster, but you need to be careful with recoil. Mark looks in fascination at the precious treasure that he has desired for quite some time. The old man says that as Mark knows, the auto-aim system installed in the eye and gun ensures maximum accuracy in hitting the target. However, with prolonged use, you can instantly lose your vision and lose consciousness, so you need to be extremely careful. Thompson carefully examines the acquisition and says that he cannot trust it to anyone but him. The old man asks if Mark really returned because he decided to complete his work. Thompson says there must be someone else behind the cartel, but he has nothing more to find out. An old acquaintance says that he always told him that the enemy is not outside, but somewhere inside. Mark puts the new thing in a holster hidden behind his jacket and says that's why he came back. Has he really decided to put an end to everything? Does he know that Joe Black has died? Thompson looks gloomily at the weapons and says he can't be sure yet. At this moment, a junior in the group of detectives calls him on his bracelet. He answers the call and tells him to say what caused the call. The girl says that in Sector 28, there was a murder combined with robbery. Mark and Meg turn around and head out, saying they'll be there in 10 minutes. Already at the door, he turns around and says that he and the old man will have a drink another time. An old acquaintance looks at the door that is already closing and asks when this fire in him will go out. It's night. The rain is falling again. The company's large office is brightly lit with large electronic banners. The stand displays video materials showing the recent battle between androids. The vice president and some scientists carefully examine their defeat. Finally, the big shot thinks it's enough and snaps his fingers and tells him to turn it off. On the pipe, tied with chains, hangs the skeleton of an android, defeated, almost nothing remains of it. The vice president looks at this and asks for information about the android that did this to him. The scientist displays a recent photo of Mag on the holographic screen. He says that this is an independent Magnum series android, developed by Brintle 2 years ago for military purposes. The vice president continues to look at the failed product and asks if the scientist knows what will happen if the subsidiary's product destroys the main company's product. The scientist asks what will happen and says that the android is a military one, and theirs was designed to maintain order in the city. The important man almost ignores the scientist, asking if there was a fight between them. The man with the glasses is sweating profusely and says that yes, that is exactly what happened. The vice president's voice and face become more serious. He says that in such a situation, there are only two outcomes. He looks at the scientist and says that once the fight starts, you can only lose or win. The vice president explains that citizens will say that such androids cannot protect them. The scientist himself understands the further consequences. The man points to the side and says that there is a prototype that can replace an entire special forces team. Vice President Jace's face changes, again interested in the affairs of roboticists, turning away from the failed design. The scientist unlocks the gate and says that they will immediately begin developing it to replace the previous model. Large sliding doors swing open to reveal a metal frame. Inside is a machine that looks extremely reminiscent of the muscular structure of a person if it consisted of light bulbs and metal. The vice president looks at the company's new creation with satisfaction and says that he needs to take revenge on Magnum at the first opportunity. The scientist bows low and says that everything will be done in the best possible way. Jace leaves silently, indicating that the conversation ends at this point. From the window, you can see the second building of the office of a company engaged in the development of androids. The vice president calls his secretary Kim to run some errand. The woman immediately appears behind Jace, asking what is required of her. He turns around and tells her to do a thorough investigation into Mark Thompson. Mark and Meg are walking down a street filled with police cars. Hannah stands behind the police tape and waits for her boss while the forensic scientist deals with the body. Seeing Mark, she shouts for the commander to come here without ceasing to chew his sandwich. She says the murder victim is a 34-year-old drug broker. His body was found with 15 stab wounds, which probably led to his death. The girl, without stopping chewing, says that this case looks like an ordinary robbery. No jewelry or money was found. Mark, trying to ignore the slurping sounds, wonders what caused the attack, whether it was really a simple robbery. Hannah realizes that she is disturbing others and apologizes for speaking with her mouth full. She rubs the back of her head slightly hesitantly and says that she hasn't had dinner yet. Mark looks at her with some curiosity, grinning. Meg just listens attentively, turning her head for the sake of decency. Thompson lifts the cloth slightly from the body, examining it, and says that a good appetite is a sign of health. She, pleased with herself, grins even wider after the praise and says that she is not afraid of anything at all except for bugs and ghosts. This takes Mag by surprise, because people are stupid to be afraid of insects, and ghosts don't exist at all. Mark asks Mag to get data on the current location and scan the crime scene and let the girl check the information. Android spends a couple of moments searching, then says that the data has been received. The girl carefully peers at the data that comes from Mag's hand. She says that the commander needs to take a look at this. There is some strange substance there. He turns around, distracted from his own thoughts. Mark asks what they found there, approaching the group of partners. He looks at the information and realizes with horror that there is a brain softener there. Thompson understands that with such evidence, the case takes a more serious turn. Hannah asks what kind of chemistry this is. She hasn't heard of it. He immediately turns gloomy and says that this is a drug that the cartel uses for punishment. It increases the pain 10 times. The girl excitedly asks if their business has something to do with the cartel. Thompson says probably not. The cartel doesn't leave evidence behind that recklessly. At this point, forensic scientists continue to conduct their research uncovering evidence. After closer inspection, Mark confirms that this cannot possibly be the cartel. Hannah suggests that this may be revenge, which was disguised as robbery. He turns around with displeasure and says that this evidence was left here on purpose. The girl sighs and says that such revenge is not suitable. You will only make it worse for yourself. Mark tells Lee to review all robbery cases in which substances produced similar results before tomorrow. After that, he turns around and, leaving, tells Meg to help her and not forget the umbrella. The girl smiles sweetly and asks if Mr. Handsome is ready to start work. Magnum smiles sweetly and says that he is ready to serve the master. An ordinary, slightly deserted street that is filled with neon signs and banners. Mark walks down the stairs to a place called Cat's Eye. Outwardly, this place resembles some kind of bar, with a beautiful woman standing behind the counter. Mark sits down at the counter and says that he's on duty, so he'll just have some water. Even a glass of water looks beautiful here in its own way, which is further emphasized by the glass. She says they haven't seen each other for a long time. What does he want today? He thanks her for being a good help here in his absence. The woman says that this is practically nothing. She would like to do even more. Mark silently drinks his water, and she carefully watches this activity. When the glass becomes empty, he tells her not to talk nonsense. What she did is enough. She straightens her impossibly dark hair and asks if everything has been resolved with him. During this serious conversation, the cat lounges on the floor, not worrying about anything. Thompson says it's hard to say about the case. He asks her to find out about the broker who runs the brain softener. She agrees and says she will sort it out soon. Mark tells her not to get involved in this matter and leave it for Thompson. She nods understandingly and then asks if she can pick up a car for him. The woman with the cat says that everything is prepared, showing Mark a new black car. Thompson thanks her and says that they will definitely see each other again. She says that this is nothing. She will send materials regarding the broker within an hour. Michael, thinking about his past and present, is driving a new car. It's deep at night, and the office of an android company towers high above the city. The vice president reviews the dossier received in the name of Mark Thompson. He learns that Mark was the leader of the first group to investigate the cartel, also received the Order of Merit from the president. The group soon collapsed due to an internal data leak during an operation to counter the Joe Black cartel. According to the secretary, this led to casualties among the police and civilians. A total of 72 people were injured. Since it was Thompson who was responsible, he was temporarily suspended from his post, and the group was disbanded. The vice president wonders how he returned to his previous place of work. The information says that he was reinstated as a lieutenant to the position of training assistant for a military android developed by the Ministry of Defense. Jace praises his secretary for a job well done, if only everyone worked. How is she? He stands alone in his office and looks at the panorama of the city that opens up to him, which means it was really him with that android. Police department, the sun is shining brightly. There are no other buildings with neon banners in sight. Mark asks what kind of garbage this is, what she dressed Meg up in. The torn pants are clearly unnecessary. She asks, really, she came up with a cool style. You can't even say that they are detectives. Mark, with an extremely tired face, asks if he is a doll for her entertainment or something. Hannah exhales angrily and asks if the commander knows how much dust Meg has accumulated. She had to clean him and give all his clothes to the dry cleaner. Magnum says that he has requested a suit with a self-cleaning function. The commander can also make a request if he wishes. Thompson asks what the hell is that leather jacket on the android? She nods and asks how it is for the commander. Magnum liked the new style. Didn't it bother him that only Meg wears a suit? It catches his eye. The girl shakes her finger and says that because of this, the investigation could be in jeopardy. Mark, with extreme reluctance, has to admit that there is meaning in her words. Meg stands aside while she says that the main thing in the operation is camouflage, and Mark is literally begging her to shut up. She says that it doesn't cause any problems for the operation, so it doesn't interfere in any way, and Mag likes it. Magnum takes the floor and says that he believes this will improve the efficiency of the operation. Mark can only hold his head in an attack of a headache. He agrees with their demands and asks them to report on what they have learned. Beaming with joy, the girl is happy to carry out any order, so she begins to tell. She shows several cases in which a similar substance was used. In the end, they found 4 more in which the victims were dismembered. Thompson looks closely at the faces of those involved in the cases in the hope that something will become clearer. Hannah then adds that the 4 dismembered were suspects in the same case. Clearly interested, Mark asks what kind of case it was. The girl instantly becomes serious and says that they were all involved in the case of the theft of Aporignol. She says that 6 years ago, Aporignol, used for drug purification, was stolen directly from a broker during transportation. Only one of the robbers was arrested on the spot. 5 more were spotted by security cameras. Reed Soot was the one who was caught on the spot, and the others had an alibi for this time, and they also denied knowing each other. It also turned out that all 6 were in no way related to each other, neither by education nor by work. Thompson asks why no one has caught on to this if 4 of them are dead. The girl says that the case was connected with the cartel because of the brain softener, and the investigation was carried out according to ordinary robbery, so no one could pay attention. Mark wonders where Reed Soot is now. Hannah says that he was released from prison a year ago. Mark rubs the bridge of his nose and says, he's taking revenge, obviously, but something is wrong here. Lee says that she also finds it strange, because after that there is no news from the broker. Mark smiles slyly and realizes that in this case, it seems that someone silenced both the police and the broker. The girl wonders what they plan to do next after all this information. Does she also ask, of course they will catch the bad guys? Magnum reports that a message has arrived via a secure channel from Cat's Eye's manager. Mark tells the girl to find information about Reed. She salutes and says that it will be done. While she's doing this, Thompson and Meg will go to meet with the informant. The Congress of Company Directors, they say that androids began to consume 250% less energy compared to last year, and now they occupy a leading position among branches. Someone wants to move on to the next topic, but an old and gray-haired man stops him. The president calls Vice President Jace, looking at him unkindly. He gets up from his seat, ready for anything, and asks what the president wanted to know from him. The old man, tapping his finger on the table, asks what he is doing now. Jace says without any hesitation that he is working on a project to build a second-generation Aporignola power plant. The president nods and tells all the other branches to stop what they're doing and help with Jace's initiative. People are starting to whisper whether that vice president's project is really that important. One of those present slams his hand on the table and says that they cannot do this. In response to this, the president asks whether there have been previous initiatives that brought the same stunning result. He says that if this project is successful, then Jace will be appointed as his representative. The old man wonders if Vice President Jace is ready for such a burden. The man smiles slyly and sparkles with his red eyes. He says that he is always ready. The president stands up from his desk and says that their meeting is over. Before leaving their seats, everyone, without exception, bows. The disgruntled vice president and his ally glare in Jace's direction before walking away. A person nearby says the vice president did a good job of getting the president's attention. Jace smiles his mysterious smile and says he was just doing his job. At this moment, he thinks that his father has a harsh temperament, so he should continue to work even harder. He remains alone in the hall and thinks for a long time about his problems that need to be solved. Jace then calls the secretary and tells her to find one person for him. A distant suburb, it is not only far away but also behind the forest. There is no light or neon here, only the sun sometimes descends on them. Magnum and Thompson are standing at the door of some inconspicuous garage. The guy inside the room bows and thanks Mark extremely for his help. The detective wonders why the guy was so effusive in his gratitude. He says that thanks to Mark, his stupid little brother got out of trouble, so now he will be forever grateful. He turns the other way and tells someone to come say hello. The younger brother of the guy, who until recently was considered a criminal, instantly runs out. He is glad that the detective is here. Without missing a beat, he bows as a sign of respect. The guy scratches the back of his head in embarrassment and says that he is extremely grateful for that time. Mark says that if he comes across him again, he is guaranteed to turn out to be a corpse. A nervous drop runs down his face. He swears that he's not doing anything like that. He's just learning the skill. Mark wonders what kind of dangerous skill it is that sent him there. His brother says that this is a hidden investigation. It turns out that he has talent. It was he who was involved in the current case. Mark's thoughts are thrown into a little confusion by such wonderful news. After this, Thompson wonders what they managed to dig up. The guy says that due to the fact that the brain softener is made to order, there is no external trade turnover. Therefore, after searching for a private manufacturer, he was able to find only one that is associated with the cartel. This man's name is Ian Hunt. He now runs a bakery and has a prosthetic leg and arm. Suburban sunny day, train tracks are located above the road so as not to cross this place on the ground. There is a small cozy bakery here that always welcomes its guests. The owner of the bakery greets the guests. Hannah is surprised at how delicious everything looks here. He invites her to try one of her products, to which she readily agrees, sincerely thanking the baker. The owner also asks Mark if he would like to try the products, but he takes out his police ID and says that he has a couple of questions. The baker's face instantly becomes serious, in which case he asks to follow him. All the detectives, together with the owner of the bakery, go out into the alley, which is located after the back entrance. He asks, not entirely confidently, what they would like to know from him. Thompson decides not to waste time on trifles, so he immediately asks if the man was selling brain baking powder. Sweat begins to trickle down the boss's face. He says he doesn't know anything about this. Mark throws an elbow into the baker's face and puts a gun on him. Thompson's eyes look almost crazy as he repeats the question, and the baker better know the answer before he loses his temper. The cook says that he left the cartel a long time ago. Mark says that 3 more strikes and he's out of the game. The owner swears that he really doesn't know anything about the topic of their conversation. Thompson says that this is the first strike. Magnum says that threatening civilians is considered an unlawful act and asks the commander to put down his weapon. Mark is momentarily distracted and tells him to close the tin immediately. He tugs the man's tie and asks who he was selling the substance to, who continues to say that he knows nothing. Ian starts crying, and Mark says that this is the second strike. Hannah appears and asks what the commander is doing. He tells her to keep quiet and continues interrogating Hunt. The girl starts screaming for Mark to stop this immediately, while he is already starting to press the trigger and say the third strike. At this very moment, the man confesses and shouts that he was selling to a guy named Crow. Thompson releases the man, who falls to his knees, covers his face with his hands, and cries. Lee approaches the cook and asks if this man called himself Crow. The bakery owner agrees. He says there was nothing he could do. He threatened to destroy the store. Mark callously says that his business will still be closed down for manufacturing an illegal drug. The man sobs and says that, however, he doesn't do this anymore. He can barely make ends meet. He even had to take out a loan from the bank for prosthetic arms and legs. Hannah asks if he doesn't have disability insurance, to which the man says he couldn't get it because he had dealings with the cartel before. Thompson continues with extraordinary cruelty that you cannot waste your life on citizens' taxes if you have lost an arm and a leg in crimes that you yourself committed. Hannah wonders if the man has an address or other clues that could help them find Crow. The slightly calmed man says that this guy just bought the goods and left. Mark says seriously, if that guy contacts him again and any other information appears, let him contact him. And if he pulls some kind of trick, he can say goodbye to his store. Tom Poston says it's time for them to leave, so the man is again left alone with his problems. The girl apologizes, saying that their commander is a little harsh, and she will stop by for a bun someday. The man says that he would be happy to meet her again, and the girl runs away after her colleagues. A criminal is brought into the room and told that they have 10 minutes to talk. Jace wonders if he knows correctly that he has the honor of communicating with Nikolai Tokarev, to which he is only interested in who came to him. The vice president invites the prisoner to talk about business. He says that he is not interested and calls the warden, since the visit is over. Jace loses his patience and shows a photo of Thompson. The man's face instantly contorts into a terrible grin. He says that this man seems to know how to handle business. The detectives inspect the building. Mark says that only here the cybercutter used at the crime scene is being produced. He and Mag will get inside and look around, and let Lee cover them with a drone, which needs to be released in 10 minutes. She agrees, but asks if they will conduct the investigation in the same way here. Thompson sighs and says that those who have been in the cartel, unfortunately, do not change. The men go off to their task, leaving the girl alone with her thoughts. After a while, she releases the drones as she was told. Everything goes smoothly. At this moment, she notices the laser sight on herself and jumps away. Behind are 2 armed men who shoot at the drones, and they respond. Hannah finds herself between 2 fires. The drones are destroyed, but the girl has already taken out her weapon and is not ready to just give up. She realizes that it was damn close, then throws some kind of grenade into the air before the enemy overtakes her position. Armed men only have time to notice the approaching weapon of mass destruction before receiving a strong electric shock. One of them laughs that they were not affected, and then notices that his weapon no longer works. Apparently, it was an electromagnetic pulse. At this moment, Hannah runs out of her hiding place and knocks out her enemies with precise shots. She pathetically unloads the chamber and says that this is already starting to get a little annoying. Meg wonders what Hannah meant when she asked her question. Thompson explains that she meant to say that she did not like his methods of investigation. Magnum wonders if the emotions used by the commander are effective in arresting a criminal. He suggests discussing this later. A man's voice comes from somewhere above. He asks if they are crazy, how they even decided to show up here. Mark shouts at them, "What the hell is this? They should get their boss out here immediately. These are the police, damn it!" They say, "Is this guy really taking them for stupid? They have been waiting for them for a long time." Thompson understands that they really are not bright. The man orders his men to open fire. This forces Mark and Magnum to rush into the scattered fire. Thompson asks the radio channel why Lee didn't warn them, but there is no answer. Meg says that the waves and scanners do not work due to jammers placed around the perimeter. Mark asks if the android's eyes are working properly. He confirms and says that he can scan within a radius of 20 meters. Thompson says that he will cover. They need to deal with them one by one but not kill them. Meg agrees. Mark jumps out from behind cover and turns on the suppression mode with a non-lethal outcome. The system installed in his eye and weapon greatly helps to aim. Thompson's influence leads to the fact that almost all opponents are stunned. The remaining ones say that he has a targeting system. You need to be careful. At this moment, Magnum jumps right in front of their faces, preparing to strike, after which he knocks out the fighter with one blow. The soldiers lie in wait for Mark, saying that they need to deal with his weapons first, but Magnum flies out from behind and deals with one after another. The commander doesn't understand what the hell is going on, and the guy next to him asks if it's a combat android fighting against them. He says that the neighbor is talking nonsense, where he has seen a combat android that looks like a person, but he says that there are models for military purposes, or this is a new police model. Mark asks how much is left. Meg says that there is not a single target left within the scanning radius that can continue the fight. Thompson repeats his demand. He wants to see their leader. The android says that he caught vibrations from the engine nearby. A large combat vehicle equipped with powerful weapons emerges from the hangar. They shoot at the duo's former location. Mark is indignant. They've gone completely crazy there or something. Thompson asks if the android can handle that armored vehicle. Meg says that it will be a little difficult. Mark says that this is understandable and asks for forgiveness for dragging the android into this, but he interrupts him and says that it will be difficult for him to destroy the machine without casualties. Thompson's face immediately breaks out into a wicked grin as he tells Magnum to rip the thing to pieces. The boss screams and asks where they are hiding. The subordinate says that they cannot detect them with the jammers on. Then he is ordered to turn them off, but then the android appears right in front of the car. Magnum turns on the power boost mode. The tank commander laughs at the fact that he wants to tear apart their armored vehicle with his hands and orders to blow up the enemy. At this moment, the android is already in front of the car and strikes, causing the entire body and the front part to crack. They drive back, shoot, and then don't understand where he went. Magnum at this moment finds himself on top of the vehicle and rips out the turret by the roots, climbing inside the tank. The man cannot believe his eyes. He asks the android to stop, but he pulls him out and grabs him by the neck. Then Meg says that the operation is completed and he is arrested on charges of obstructing police investigations. The girl runs through the destroyed factory and realizes what kind of mess they have made here. She calls out to Mag and the captain, but to no avail. Then she is very surprised when she finds them safe and sound. Hannah looks at the remains of the tank and, smiling, asks herself if she can remain intact, working in such a team. Mark, on the side of the couple, is shouting at people, saying that he will not let them get away with this. They are completely out of their hands. They say that they are very sorry, they are begging for their life. Thompson asks if they really think they can open fire according to the police, and then just leave. They say that recently all sorts of crazy people are often attacking arms brokers. They mistakenly mistook the detectives for them. Mark orders the boss to shut the door and asks if they sold the goods to that person. The boss tries to hide something, but then Thompson asks how many years everything they just did here lasts. Android asks if he should start the court system. Mark says that if he does, Silvertown will be the boss's home for the next few years. The former prisoner comes out. The vice president's servant says that he is waiting. Jace says that for the contract they need to first establish insurance, and only then communicate. These are small devices in the heart and carotid artery. Nikolai asks what if they decide to finish him off at the end of everything. The vice president is blazing with anger and says, "Does Tokarev really think that he conducts business like that garbage? This suits the man quite well," and he asks what about the advance payment and equipment. They show him a suit that seems to be created to kill. Nikolai once again notices that Jace really knows how to run a business. Mark asks if Hannah has entered all the information about Crow into the general database. She says that she has done so. Then the man tells her to make sure Meg goes to the maintenance department to fix the damaged parts and restore power. And when they are finished, then they will continue to investigate. Hugh says that the boss is calling him and Mark right now. The boss says that Thompson is an idiot because no one allowed him to collect information on the cartel. He is not a member of the cartel investigation team. He stands still and says that at the moment he is investigating a murder case and also catching criminals whom they cannot catch. The commander says that he is completely crazy and is crossing the line because he should be training the android and not doing this. Mark's face changes and says that if he crossed the line, the boss would have already slapped him in the face. A man asks Magnum to open a file with data on the latest investigations. The android asks for forgiveness, but says that the man does not have the necessary authority. The man says that he is the commander of the first crime-fighting group. He should have access. Mag just says that disclosure of information without the permission of the copyright holder is prohibited. The man takes a wrench and hits the android in the face, calling him a tin can. He orders access to him. Hannah comes up and asks what they are doing here. Let him stop immediately. She asks if Magnum is okay, to which the commander says that he is an android. There won't be a scratch on him. Lee says that he is not only an android, but also a member of their team. So she is publicly protesting his actions and is going to report everything to the commander. The man comes up and says that if she continues to work with Thompson, her life will go downhill. He recommends that she change teams as soon as possible. She says that she is only a newbie, but asks permission to recommend something to him. The higher rank. She says that his breath stinks terribly, so it wouldn't hurt to get checked at the hospital. The man realizes that she is the same as the commander and silently leaves. The girl approaches Magnum and asks if everything is okay with him. He says that there is no damage, but he does not understand why she entered into a confrontation with her colleague. She says that it is because he wanted to harm Mag, but he does not understand. After all, no damage was received. But she says that this is natural, because you always start to get angry when your loved ones are offended. At this moment, Mark calls and says that he is waiting for them in the parking lot and asks them not to linger. Hannah says that she heard an unpleasant conversation about Mark, but he says that this is a common thing when you work with him. It happens all the time, and if she doesn't like it, then she can always change the group. She says that there is no need for her to do this, because Meg is handsome here. They can only survive if they stick to each other. Mark talks to another man involved in the case. He says that the court has confirmed that he is not guilty, but Thompson says that the man is in danger. He says that, unfortunately, the opinions of the criminals and the courts differ. The man says that he met a lot of crazy people when he worked at his last job. He asks the lieutenant to catch them all. The world is constantly going crazy, or he is crazy. As a result, he agrees to provide any assistance to the investigation if necessary. Mark nods gratefully and leaves. Thompson comes to his people and asks if they managed to inspect the territory. Hannah says that there is a fortification wall installed outside, intended for military purposes, and also motion sensors for the same purpose. It looks as if it all appeared here quite recently. Mark says the situation is similar inside. There are security androids on every floor. The girl assumes that he already knows that he is the target of a hunt. Thompson says that of course he knows, and then asks if Meg can scan the inside of the mansion. He says that this is impossible. The protection is too good. Hannah says that she found and uploaded the location of Reed Sweat into the general database. Mark says that he doesn't care if one of these types dies, but they must prevent the crime. Lee says she needs to go away for a while, so the car leaves without her. Ian talks to his daughter. She asks if he can pick her up today. He says that not yet. She is not upset, saying that her adoptive father treats her well. Hunt says that he needs to work part-time while she is there. He won't be able to talk. After the end of the call, the father asks for forgiveness from his daughter. Lee appears behind him and says that she is very nice. The man does not understand when she managed to appear. She says that she came to buy a bun. He was not in the store, so she came here. He asks for forgiveness, went to talk to his daughter. She says that she was also close to her father, even if not her own. The man says that he is not worthy to be called a father. Hannah smiles and says that you can't tell that from his daughter's face. They thank each other, and the girl leaves with her baked goods, and the man follows her with a heavy look. A photo showing Mark's old squad, including Hugh. The boss asks when Thompson will catch the criminal. He already has a headache. Mark wonders why the boss blames him for this and not alcohol. The lieutenant says that he is going to capture the criminal tonight, but would be glad to receive additional equipment. The boss advises him not to be smart. 3 policemen are breaking down some door, which is located in the residential area of the building. They burst into different rooms, but everything is empty, as if no one has been here for a long time. Mark asks if the address is accurate. Lee says that the scan leads right here. Meg checks everything for the presence of suspicious objects. Judging by the density of the wall, it is filled with something. This is not an explosive. Thompson commands to break through the wall. Magnum punches directly into the center of the wall, punching a hole from which small pieces fly off, revealing the incredible inside. Medical examiners are examining the body to determine the cause of death and other useful information. The newspapers write that in the case of the disappearance of the Aboriginal 6 years ago, the investigation reached a dead end. The boss calls Mark and his boss. He asks how this is connected. They say that they found the body of the main suspect. Mark's boss says that they can't just close it on these are the eyes. He will take responsibility. The boss asks everyone to leave except Mark. The man asks why Captain Thompson returned. He asks if the boss wants to hear an honest answer. He assumes to take revenge on the cartel. Mark says that revenge is a simple outcome. He is planning a real cold-blooded slaughter. Everyone involved in the death of his wife and daughter must pay. The boss gives the go-ahead. Thompson, who was not expecting, asks how much time he has. The boss says 24 hours, then he must hand over his weapon and badge. Mark says that he will finish it earlier. The boss tells him to complete this matter and be sure to return alive, because he wishes with all his heart for Thompson to succeed. Hannah rummages through the computer, but then jumps up and calls the commander. It seems to her that she has found something. He says that he and the android are going to investigate the cartel case. Let her sit and wait for now. She says that she needs something to say, but there is no signal anymore. She understands that they clearly don't know something. There must be one more person and one more thing. The assistant to the vice president tells Nikolai to report his actions in advance and not even try to escape. If he notices strange things, let him immediately fly into the air. He checks his weapon and slightly touches the advisor. He wants to say something, but Tokarev is close and asks what he wanted to say. The man asks if the criminal wants to die right now. He smiles brutally and agrees to follow the instructions. An old acquaintance of Mark asks the android whether Nikolai's tracker is working well. He does not notice any deviations, but the man still doesn't like it. Hannah digs into the computer and finds that the data on the 6 people involved in the case were deleted simultaneously in accordance with the law on the protection of personal information. But if they had not really known each other, they would not have disappeared on the same day. Something is fishy here. The reason why the killer killed the victims is clearly in their past. Detective Lee hacks into the system and looks at the biographies of the suspects, where she finds information about the baker's daughter. Hannah comes to Ian again. She asks if they can talk. He says that there is no problem in this. She once again praises his buns and then changes her face and asks to stop this revenge. She will definitely make all those responsible pay for their sins. The man's face changes and asks what she's talking about. Lee says that 15 years ago, a case was opened about teenage bullying and stealing money. At first, they mocked and blackmailed their victims and then posted videos on the internet. For 2 years, they organized terrorized children. They were later arrested. However, with the help of a youth rehabilitation program, they got off with a simple sentence, or rather, erasing their memory and adjusting their consciousness, since they were minors. If they had received a significant punishment, justice would have triumphed. But the father of one of the children turned everything around in such a way that even such measures were not applied, since he was a former member of parliament. The punishment was carried out on paper, and the culprits have now changed their names and, most likely, are living happily. Ian, one of the victims, after the case was closed, lived in agony due to the injury he received, and eventually decided to take extreme measures when the criminals gathered 6 years later. The man shouts that he already said he was a lousy father, and she says that she doesn't think so. But Hunt says that his daughter died alone because they didn't have the money to erase her memories of those events. And they didn't suffer no punishment. He will make them pay. So even after a few years, he will fulfill his fatherly duty. Mark exchanges envelopes with some man. He says that he doesn't owe him anything anymore, and then notices that their boss has put a large reward on Thompson's head. He asks why this is. The guy says that it's because during that deal, he killed his brother. Well, that guy with the chainsaw. Thompson asks Mag to contact Hannah, but he says that there is a signal, but no answer, and one message has also been found. While in prison, Ian saw a video where his daughter was being bullied. He was the last to get it. On the day of his return, she committed suicide. It was said that all the culprits were punished, but he could not find them because all personal information was erased. He could not save his daughter, but decided to live for her at all costs, mastered a new profession, and opened a store. Until one day, a guy came to him for a brain softener, who began to boast about his past. He himself told what he had done with Hunt's daughter. Then he realized that the heavens were giving him a sign that he still had a matter that he, as a father, must deal with. Ian killed the guy and took the cyborg's arm and leg from him, then performed an operation to attach them to himself. At that moment, he was grateful that he could feel pain for the sake of his daughter. He apologizes to the tied-up Hannah and says the delivery man will arrive tomorrow. Mark and Magnum are rushing at breakneck speed. They saw a recording from Lee. The commander asks where she is. She says that Hunt went after the last victim, and she, even though she got loose, is still locked in the basement of the bakery. The lieutenant stops in the middle of the road and says that he is from the police. He urgently needs to requisition the man's bike. He tells the android to follow the detective and call for help, and he will intercept the suspect. The man complains that he has not yet managed to pay the installment plan. Even while Young is destroying the protective androids, he sees his dead daughter in his eyes, who asks where he was when she needed help. The owner of the house tries to escape, but a laser shot pierces his leg right through, leaving a large hole. Ian slowly approaches him and asks what the man thinks about his action regarding his daughter. He only says that the trial ended a long time ago, and he served his sentence. Hunt is glad that he is not talking like a man, because for a dog's death. The man is already swinging his robotic limb for the final touch, but then Mark appears and shoots off his robotic hand. He tells Ian to turn off the weapon system and lie down on the floor. He asks if the detective has a child, after which the lieutenant's expression is slightly distorted. Hunt takes advantage of the moment and rushes at the detective himself to take him out of the game. Mark shoots the criminal in the forehead, removing half of his mask and forcing him to miss. Ian says he will kill the bastard and turn himself in voluntarily. But Mark says, does Hunt really believe that the detective will believe the words of a cartel henchman? The man says that the lieutenant in his place did the same, because he also lost loved ones. Since then his eyes are filled with bestial rage, because he always thinks about revenge. Yes, he noticed this. Mark orders Ian to shut up and says that if he twitches, he will shoot him in the heart. Hunt asks if the detective really wants to compete with the cyborg in reaction speed. The lieutenant takes a shot and grabs his head because he used the implant for too long. The shot goes into the leg, the killer goes to his victim, saying that he should feel the same pain that his daughter experienced. Mark threatens to shoot again. The man is again about to deal with his victim, but Magnum appears out of nowhere, pulls out a cybernetic hand, and puts Ian on his shoulder blades. He says that Hunt has been arrested on suspicion of committing first-degree murder. Hannah approaches Mark and asks if he's okay. He says he's just dizzy, nothing really wrong. A couple of moments later, the police and ambulance arrive. The detectives are wondering what to do next, and the victim with saliva spraying from his mouth screams for them to conduct a trial immediately. Hannah shouts at him to be quiet because they are on duty. Mark asks Meg to launch a trial. The wounded man shouts that he fully supports him. Only the death penalty is suitable for him, to which Lee literally shouts at him to shut up. She doesn't want a trial. The system is launched. The detectives and the suspect are inside it. The voice says that according to the special law on Aperignol, the creation and sale of prohibited substances, murder in the first degree, and violation of the law on the exploitation of an artificial body, a sentence of death is imposed. Hannah is almost crying. Mark undertakes to carry out the sentence. He asks if Ian wants to say something for the last time. He asks for forgiveness from his beloved daughter. He is sorry that Daddy could not do anything. Hannah wonders if it is possible to somehow soften punishment. Meg says that for this, you can get a punishment for interfering with the investigation. The victim shouts if they shouldn't deal with him quickly. Well, let them finish this ruthless killer quickly. Mark is going to carry out the sentence. Hunt apologizes to the detectives and shouts that even if he dies, this bastard will go with him. But he does not have time to do anything. The court says that cardiac arrest has been recorded. The victim lies contentedly on his couch and is glad that he is alive. After all, there is some benefit from paying taxes. It's a real weight off his shoulders. Hannah screams at the victim, and Mark, fuming with anger, comes up and takes him by the collar. The man does not understand what they are up to. He orders him to be released. Then Mark slightly pushes him to collide with the ground. He asks the detective that he wanted to die, but he bares his teeth and says that this man has been arrested for theft of Aperignol and illegal use of weapons. He begins to sweat and says that they have no evidence. Meg shows a video recording from the scene of the deal. His face is visible there, a 100% match, without interference. Mark wonders if he really thought that he had cleaned up all the tails. But the cartel's henchmen are quite scrupulous. They saved everything. Thompson calls another court system, but then his boss pushes him on. He says that this case has been transferred to the group for investigating especially serious crimes. A trial cannot be held here. Mark asks whether this situation contradicts the special article on Aperignol. Magnum says no. Thompson says that the android initiates the trial. The man will act according to the law. It doesn't matter to him what they say. The judge says that on suspicion of theft of aperignol, violation of the law on the handling of aperignol and illegal use of weapons, a sentence of life imprisonment is imposed. The man's forehead veins bulge as he screams, "How can they trust this thing?" Mark rises above him and says that the law is an instrument created by man, and this thing was made to implement this very law. The boss asks if Thompson will take responsibility for this. He asks to talk about it later. Magnum approaches Hannah and asks if she's all right. Her condition is unsatisfactory. She smiles forcefully and says that it's probably because she hasn't eaten for a whole day. The captain also didn't have time to have a snack, so they go together. After all their business, they all sit and have dinner together, while the android just sits next to him. Hannah eats her soup and says that Meg simply has to know its taste. He says that it's fine anyway, and then recommends that they start eating while she not cooled down. The girl says that getting together and having dinner at the same table is reminiscent of family gatherings. Then she gets confused and realizes that she has touched on a sore subject for the commander. He pretends that he didn't notice anything and says that he needs to eat already. A man talks to his daughter, who is preparing for surgery and is not at all afraid. The doctor even praised her for this. She asks if Daddy will be able to visit her this Saturday. He says that of course he will come. The girl behind says that he shouldn't worry. The best specialists are treating his daughter, so it's time to fulfill his promise. But he says that he first wants to see how the girl recovers after the operation, because the red box is his only insurance, and his daughter is the important thing he has. She grabs him by the shirt and says he can only rely on them at the moment. Is he sure he doesn't want to cooperate, so let Joe Black cut it on his nose. The presenter is interested in how the president assesses the situation with the construction of a new Aperignola power plant. Jay says that on the path of progress, they are bound by the chain of morality and law, but this is only for a while. In the end, someone will definitely break it, and this story will be remembered as a revolution. This is what he is working on now to achieve freedom and progress. Then the correspondent decides to ask the last question. He wants to talk about the information presented in the report on the project for the construction of an aperignol power plant. He became suspicious of concealing a report on a deadly defect, as the vice president could comment on this. He chuckles and, to the journalist's surprise, says that they'll probably end there. The man says that this is a live broadcast. You can't just end it. And the secretary says that issues have been agreed upon that cannot be touched upon. They can sue, so let the TV company get ready. The woman asks for forgiveness. She said that she warned the reporter several times about this issue at the preliminary meeting. He tells her not to worry and go about her business. He asks if Captain Chen saw what happened. Let him deal with it immediately. He will settle everything in their usual way. The man says that this is not enough. He wants the reporter to struggle in agony before and after death, so that even in hell he will be overcome with fear when he hears his name. Let his man approach this matter thoroughly. Hannah reads the news about the fabrication of a case against a former victim. She believes that until the whole truth comes to light, this case will not end. Mark comes up and says that the father not only cleaned up his son's tails, but also participated in the affair with the aperignol, so he too will also pay for all his crimes. The girl asks if the captain is all right. He says that they have already come a long way. He recently learned that the aperignol that the screamer was selling was stolen from the evidence storage room at the Sector B police station, so this case was not really investigated. Hannah wonders what she can do in her position. Mark says that it was thanks to her and her efforts that they learned the truth. That's enough to change their world, and she thanks Thompson for the praise. Mark says he'll go to the hospital while she finishes the investigation files and prepares equipment for Mag. The girl says that then she will make Magnum's equipment even cooler, Thompson says as she pleases. During an investigation into the use of a drug used to purify aperignol, a popular presenter was killed while attempting to resist with a weapon. During the operation, it was impossible to predict the damage, since he was in a state of drug intoxication. But thanks to the android nearby, secondary damage was avoided. The president praises the vice president for a job well done, who is very grateful. The head asks if they expect any deviations from the schedule. Jay says that they can finish even faster since the structures are similar to the previous power plant. The president asks who they are and where they came from, and whether there are even answers to these questions. The vice president says that of course there are, but they may not coincide with expectations. The old man asks what it takes to get the answer he wants. Jay says it only takes time. The president says that their next target is bioroids. Aperignol from the station will serve as good material for them to create an immortal brain. The old man asks if the vice president also wants to take his place on the tree branch. He says that it depends only on the desire of the president. The elderly man says that he will finally decide when he sees the completed project. Some guy with chewing gum and glasses enters a military building as if it were his home. The military man asks what the purpose of the visit is, and the man asks him to get out of here, saving his life, since he is going to turn everything upside down here. The man does not understand what the hell his guest is talking about. Let him name his organization and name. The stranger says that he is sorry, but the guard himself decided that he does not want to live. A gun is pointed at a soldier. He does not understand what is happening, and a man with a crazy expression on his face shoots him in the chest. Androids record a shootout at the entrance. All security forces are preparing to repel the attack. Turrets climb out of the ceiling. Androids cock their weapons. A car drives in with a crowd of military men who deal with the security systems. The guard calls the control point and says that the warehouse has been attacked. There is no signal. The enemy knocks out his communication device and knocks him to the floor. The guy wonders if the quality of the body armor has improved, or if there is something wrong with his gun. The man wonders if this psycho even knows where he is. This is the Aperignol warehouse, which is guarded by the Blue Magic Corporation. He is feignedly surprised at how small the warehouse is, the size of his refrigerator, and here is what was stolen from them from their cartel. The guard asks if this madman wants to turn himself in. The police are probably on their way here. He just blows the gum and says that he knows. This will make it harder for the guard's boss to do something, and then he kills the talkative man. Mark asks the doctor how bad his eyes are after using the implant for so long. The doctor says that, as expected, his optic nerve was damaged. In this case, he can only recommend removing the implant. Otherwise, he risks losing his vision completely, although it may already be too late. Thompson says it's too early to get rid of him, and he doesn't care if he can see later. Because if he removes the implant now, he will not be able to die in peace. Mark asks if there is another way. The doctor says that if he insists, they can try adjusting the sensitivity sensors as a temporary solution. But this is not a treatment, but an emergency measure. A little girl in the middle of the corridor is trying to reach some colored cans, but she is not tall enough. Mark, passing by, presses the drink button for her and asks if this is what she was looking for. She thanks him and sits down to drink her soda next to Thompson. He looks at the girl. She thinks that he is also thirsty, but he smiles and says that everyone here has something in pain. She says that her chest is bothering her, and he says that he has minor problems with his eyes. She says that she has excellent vision. She even sees what is in the distance better than Dad. Mark asks where her dad is now, after which she becomes sad. He changes the topic, saying that he also came alone, so he is afraid that the vaccination will be too painful. The girl smiles widely and says that her dad is also afraid of injections. It seems that all dads are afraid of injections. He says that it's true. All dads are cowards. She asks if he wants her to stay with him when they give the injection. He says that he would be extremely grateful. Then he gets up after hearing or seeing something in the darkness of the corridor. Hannah says that she knew it. Magnum looks great in any suit. The android says that too pretentious appearance is not camouflage. The girl says that this is not so. The cooler their outfit, the less suspicion they will cause. In addition, according to Hannah, the android is so handsome that wearing ordinary clothes will, on the contrary, attract more attention. And if he is dressed like that, people will be more cooperative. He says that he will take note of this. The police department receives a message that during the operation to capture an armed cartel in Aperignol, there was a sudden attack on the First National Hospital. At the moment, the attacker is inside along with the hostages. Meg and Lee understand that this is where Mark is now. The android cannot contact with him. As a result of the main power supply system being blocked, it switches to the emergency one. The guy is glad that this time the gun helped him break the shield. A man comes up from behind and says that they installed a barrier to block electromagnetic waves as requested, and also gathered all the hostages in one place. The leader asks what is happening outside. The fighter says that, as expected, the special forces and androids have arrived. He says that it is time to begin the second part of the plan. Drones are flying around the building from all sides, and a bunch of police and special forces vehicles are crowded at the entrance. The reporter reports that the criminals are now inside along with their hostages. Jack Hugh orders everyone to defend their posts and await further instructions. The boss asks Hugh about the special forces group. He says that one detachment has arrived, and they have also stationed a team of snipers separately. Jack says that they won't be able to launch a rescue operation unless the criminals give them any information about the hostages. The commander does not understand what information they are waiting for, but then Chen appears and says that they cannot wait long. If the police do not find a solution in 30 minutes, then they begin an assault with the help of androids. The police boss says there are hostages, and Captain Chen asks if it's worth worrying about now. The criminals appropriated the Aperignol of the subsidiary company Sky Caston. If something goes missing, the people who are on the spot will be responsible for it. Therefore, they will not wait more than 30 minutes. Let the police set their priorities correctly. The police captain says that that guy is trash. He was even trash when he served in the police. What does human life even mean to him? Then the sound of a bullhorn is heard from the hospital. The criminal says that in 30 minutes, there should be a manually controlled helicopter on the roof of the building. If they pull some kind of trick, then he cannot guarantee the safety of the hostages. The police boss says that finding a helicopter in 30 minutes will be difficult. Let them reconsider their request. The cartel member says that he does not believe that it will be difficult for them. If so, then every minute he will kill a hostage and send the corpse to them. Meg and Hannah finally appear, and the captain asks why there are only two of them. The girl says that the commander went to the hospital today for an eye test. Now they cannot contact him. The records of his last location match the hospital. Presumably, he is inside. Nikolai approaches the android squad. Chen asks what he is doing here and who allowed him to put on the cyborg body. He says that he will enter the building first and shows Mark's location. Captain Chen understands that Thompson being in the hospital is a big problem. Let him not interfere. The cyborg says that he does not have the authority to give orders. Mark leaves the girl on the sofa and says that it's safe here. Let her stay here and wait for him to return. He tells her not to open the door for anyone, and then they shake little fingers together so she thinks everything is okay. The lieutenant leaves the room and goes on reconnaissance. He knew that there would be no signal. There are two armed criminals in the control room. One is on guard, and the other is rummaging through something. The first is extremely unhappy that the second is taking so long to install the explosives. The security guard says that he is always late somewhere because of him, but he says that the first one only knows how to scratch his tongue, while Mark sneaks into the room unnoticed. The lieutenant deals with them and realizes that there is no connection, but the rest of the systems are working. He sees where the hostages are being held. He realizes that this doesn't seem to be the first time they've done something like this. Mark realizes that he still needs to somehow contact those outside. At that moment, he sees a drone in the window and understands what he needs to do. Magnum says that light of a special frequency is emanating from inside. Should he check the signal? Hannah is glad that if the signal is from inside, then it must be Thompson. He says that 42 hostages are locked in a conference room on the 3rd floor. The cartel has planted bombs. The hostage execution is planned at 16:30. It is recommended to divert the cartel's attention. The commander doesn't understand how this idiot always manages to get himself into trouble, so Hannah asks how he's going to rescue the hostages if he's the only one. The boss says that in normal times, Mark might be a dunce, but in the cartel, he had the nickname of the straw cutter. So they would be afraid for the people with him, not for him, and they need to think about how to help him. Hannah is up to something and asks what the cartel's demands are. The cartel leader says that when they are sent a helicopter, they will use it as a distraction while they quietly leave in an ambulance. Another man asks what to do with the bombs that are placed near the hostages. The commander says that if the cops are smart and notice them, they will just blow everything to hell here. Someone continues to plant a bomb when a silhouette appears behind him. Mark is behind the door with the hostages. He is noticed by the doctor who worked with the chip. He counts down to 3 and kicks the door off, making a lot of noise. Then the gunman turns around. The doctor pushes him with his head, and he falls right on Mark, who knocks him out. Mark introduces himself and says that he is from the police and will help them get out of here. He could use the help of someone who knows a short way down. The doctor says that he will most likely be able to help with this. He will be extremely grateful for your cooperation. Mark understands that everyone is very scared, but on the way to the exit, he asks everyone to move quietly but quickly. The doctor says there are criminals outside too, isn't it too risky? Thompson says there is no need to worry about this, since all the guards inside the building have already been neutralized. They also somehow need to attract the attention of people outside. A helicopter flies to the hospital's location to be taken over by the cartel. Thompson looks at his watch and realizes that it is time for them to move out, since the time has come. Android and Chen do not understand that the turntable was left right outside the hospital. The captain says that they are crazy, so he orders the immediate release of Delta Squad to ensure the safety of the Aperignol. The helicopter lands. The militants take the pilot aside and tell him not to do anything stupid. The leader rejoices and tells his man to contact the explosives team. He orders the group to immediately arrive on the roof, but for some unknown reason they are all silent. The leader begins to get nervous. The man tells the boss that they are not responding to his signals. Complete silence. A person from the entry blocking team contacts him and says they have an emergency. A squad of androids has penetrated from within. The leader needs to escape immediately. He doesn't understand how they even dared and orders hostages to be brought in so that he can kill them all. The criminals shoot at the androids, but they ignore their shots and carry out detention procedures. They end up knocking out many opponents with an electrical blast. One of the bandits uses an underbarrel grenade launcher and asks what these tin cans even think they are, but the machines have no idea. Mark doesn't understand what the hell is going on, why there's so much noise around if there are still hostages inside. Then one of the criminals runs out, but Thompson quickly kicks him in the head. Mark waits for the next wave and tells the hostages to go down to the back entrance of the hospital. The police will be waiting for them there, but he will not go with them, since there is another person waiting for him inside. Thompson says not to worry about him. Let the doctor lead all the hostages out. The police receive the fleeing hostages, but they do not understand where Commander Thompson is. Hannah asks various people if there was a male police officer with them. Someone asks if she is a colleague of Mark Thompson. The girl turns around and asks how the man knows his name. He says that he is still inside, as he said that he still needs to take someone else out of the building. Hannah asks in which direction he went. The doctor says that to a separate building. Mark runs down the corridor with a little girl on his shoulders, no one around. Unexpectedly, opponents appear, then Thompson has to hide behind a wall. He brings the girl down and leaves the shelter for a while to fire a couple of shots. He calms the girl down, saying that everything is fine. He will definitely get her out of here. The door behind the enemies explodes. Someone throws away the survivors. Nikolai appears, who is very happy to see the straw cutter again. Mark asks why the hell he forgot here. The cyborg says that they will talk when Thompson dies. The man grabs the girl and begins to systematically run towards the exit, dodging Nikolai's attack. Cyborg says that Mark can run if he wants, and then stabs him in the back with his terrible claws and says that soon the captain will meet his family. Magnum appears out of nowhere and delivers a swift blow to Nikolai. Having dealt with the enemy with one blow, Meg asks if the commander is okay. Mark sits with a small trickle of blood coming out of his mouth and asks why he always shows up when things get out of hand. He should come a little earlier. The android says that he detected a dangerous situation for the commander when entering the building and immediately went to help. And Mark did not evade the attack. He himself usually calls this an idiotic act. The man gets up and asks where the android learned to make fun of people. He says that he only analyzed the commander's speech patterns. A slightly damaged killing machine emerges from the corridor, and Mag's reaction amuses him. Magnum says that he put on a cyborg body prohibited by law, whether to make an arrest. Mark says that this guy cannot be detained. He just needs to win, no matter with a fatal outcome or not. Then the android recommends the commander to retreat. Nikolai shoots a beam of light at Mark's back, wondering if he decided to run away from their party. The weapon leaves a melted mark on the floor, but the man and girl manage to dodge. Nikolai says that it's time to play for real. They begin the battle with the android. The cartel man says it was a brilliant idea to rob an arms broker. The slightly shabby boss says that he needs to leave quickly in an ambulance. People say that contact has been lost with the search party, as well as with the bomb-planting group. What should they do? The leader says that they have already been knocked out. Only the one who is already here can escape. As soon as they leave the hospital territory, they will definitely detonate all the bombs. The police make their way into the building. The leader shouts for the militants to hurry up and not let the cops get here. Hannah says the criminals are planning to escape in an ambulance. The bandit takes out a rocket launcher and says how annoying the police are, firing a charge at them. Meanwhile, the ambulances leave at the fastest available speed. An android appears out of nowhere and hits the door with its body. People from the second car get out and shoot at the android in an attempt to destroy it. The leader comes out of the crippled car and sees the culprit of all his troubles, saying that even idiots like him can succeed in their career. The android initiates the man in the car as lockdown, wanted cartel member John Black. Chen says that he knows this without him. Let him search the car. The machine successfully detects the stolen aporignal in the car. Chen pushes lockdown away from him and says he's lucky the aporignal wasn't hurt. If there had been even a small puncture, he would already be dead. He orders the android to judge lockdown. They hear strange signals and realize that a bomb has been activated in the trunk of the car with aporignal. The captain asks how this happened. Then the machine says that it went off at the moment of the suspect's death. Hannah looks into the car and says that the timer started automatically at the moment of death. The android says that if an aporignal explosion occurs here, the affected area will be 2 kilometers. Chen asks Delta 7 if the remaining aporignal crates have bombs installed. Android says the signal was detected only in this container. Chen then says that they need to take the remaining containers and evacuate. Hugh says that this is out of the question, since civilians will be harmed. Delta says that the mine clearance team will have to wait 15 minutes, and there are only 9 left before the explosion. Chen turns around and asks if they heard, if they want to live, then it's better for them to get out of here. Hannah says that it is impossible to evacuate all civilians from the affected area in such a time. She asks Jack to evacuate at least those who are nearby. Over the intercom, Hugh transmits that everyone should evacuate 2 kilometers from the scene of the incident and also help civilians get into basements and bomb shelters. They have an emergency. He calls headquarters and asks them to spread this damn quickly. He asks what Hannah is doing. There is no time to fool around. Let her hurry up. She says that she will defuse the bomb herself. Hugh does not believe his ears and asks how she was going to do this. She says she once took a certified safety exam, so she knows how to disarm explosive devices, and Thompson and Meg are still in the building. The girl says that she needs to get ready and carefully approaches the bomb. She asks Hugh to give her an emergency light before he leaves, because it's darker than it first seemed. A girl is bending over Mark. She calls him and cries, but in the end he wakes up. While he was passed out, the android and the cyborg continued their fight. It even looked like it was a worthy opponent for Magnum. Nikolai says that his opponent fights well for a tin can. In response, the android says that if the cyborg surrenders now, his punishment will be reduced during the trial. The enemy says that he will first tear Mag into pieces, and then think about his proposal. After this, they clash in a battle, as a result of which Meg damages the cyborg. He asks why this is such a big pain in the ass. Mark sits down against the wall, takes the gun, smiles, and tells the girl to be patient a little longer, because soon it will end. He stands up, starts aiming, and uses the maximum auto-aim sensitivity level. Hugh holds a flashlight for the girl and watches as she tries to defuse the explosives. She cuts the yellow wire. Magnum and Nikolai are already butting heads, clinging to each other's hands. The cyborg says that Sky Caston really managed to make a good toy. At the commander's signal, the android kicks Nikolai, after which Mark fires a shot that hits the target. Hannah, sweating to the skin, realizes that they have successfully secured the charge. Nikolai curses heavily after being hit by a pistol. He understands that the neural arch in his spine has been damaged, and he will soon not be able to move, and says that his opponents are scum and he will never forgive them. Nikolai decides to blow off their heads at all costs for what they did to him. The enemy escapes by making a hole in the wall, and Mark faints again. The news anchor says the scene looks more like a battlefield now, but police have neutralized all the cartel members who attacked the hospital. John Black gets mad and says that he is going there because his daughter is there now. There is silence on the line. He decides that he was ignored, but a moment later a man appears and says that an order has been received to take him to the hospital. John says that they promised to take care of everything. If even a hair fell from his daughter's head, he would terminate the contract. A man in a suit opening the door says that his daughter is fine. If this is not so, then they are ready to accept responsibility for it. Black says that he has not seen this man here before. He says that this is so, yesterday was his first day of work. Then John tells Jonathan, who came before him, to remember that he owes him a debt, and the men keep their promises. The guy says that's what they do, yes. Then Black asks if Jonathan was a man, showing that he figured him out and asking who he is. A couple of moments later, Black is already leaving the elevator with the knocked-out guard and heading off in an unknown direction. At the hospital, Hannah and a little girl sit next to Mark, entertaining him. When they leave, Thompson gets up and walks out the door. The commander, who happens to be nearby, asks if he is allowed to go out. Mark tries to blurt out that he will write a report later. The boss is surprised he actually didn't come to work. The prosecutor appears nearby and asks if it is true that he saw Nikolai. This is true, but Mark has no idea how he got out of prison. All he can say with certainty is that the guy tried to kill him. The woman asks if he was the exact target of the attack and if Thompson thought there was something more to it. The man says he doesn't know if he is being hunted or if the cartel is hiding something else. He thinks that they will not be able to find out anything until they interrogate the criminal himself. The woman wonders if he really doesn't have any clues that could lead to those people. At this moment, she suddenly gets a call, and she says to gather the whole squad. She will be there now. Mark asks who the woman is, says only what he wants. The boss says she's busy, and then asks if he needs sick leave. The woman asks how this happened. The man says that it's about a spy. It turned out that he was a professional cartel agent who was transferred to them as a security guard 6 months ago. The prosecutor shouts how this could have happened, if this is a first-level secret operation, and someone also hacked the police database. But the man says that there are no traces of hacking. She realizes how rotten everything is. Now they must find the red box faster than the others. Have they figured out where Black went? They found out, but he removed the tracking device and ran away. A woman tells her memories of being captured in a hospital on TV. She says that first the shooting started on the first floor. It was like hell. She believes that if the androids use weapons brutally, then the cartel will do the same. But some sacrifices must be made for the sake of safety. Regarding the response of the androids and the police, they called it an inadequate use of force. They said that their initial reaction was unsatisfactory, and so on. A lot of public opinions are now being collected. The vice president is upset that Chen not only missed Joe Black, but also did not know that his daughter was in that hospital. He asks for forgiveness. Jace turns around and says that he turned the image of his androids into chaos and failed all the work. He is sure that he wants to say something else. Chen asks the vice president to press the button if he screws up the case again. He says that he will do it without his words. Hound's modification is complete. Let him get rid of Delta and take this guy with him. Meg asks over the communication channel if the commander is leaving the hospital early. He says that he will rot if he doesn't get out now, and then asks if Meg has dug up anything. Mark thinks that walking along the corridor, he noticed a familiar face. After that, he decides to come in and find out how the girl is doing. She says that she was praised again. Even her dad visited her today. She was wondering where her uncle was going to go. He says that now he needs to go to work, but he will definitely come back, and then asks the name of the girl whom he has not recognized in all this time. She says that her name is Leah Baum, and he introduces himself. She says that her last name is taken from her mother, and her father's is too long, so they call him by his nickname. Then Mark asks what his name is. She says, Salvatore Nero Reina, so his friends just call him John Black, a strange name, after which the hero's face changes beyond recognition. The police boss asks who the prosecutor thinks the police are. How dare she ignore their investigation? The woman responds to this by saying that they should solve their problems with corruption. Then she will definitely share information and take them into account. She does not trust them, so she does everything alone. The chief yells that this doesn't mean she can cover up Joe Black's death. The police have lost so many people trying to track him down. After this, she asks with a serious face whether these sacrifices were of any use. The cartel continued to grow, and Skycastin gained power. Only evidence of the connection between Joe and the corporation could prove its illegality. Be that as it may, the police cannot hand over Black's sick daughter to the prosecutor's office. She says that they have no authority. Only the police and the prosecutor's office can stop Skycastin. Mark, on edge with bulging veins, bursts into the office and says that it seems the woman has something to tell him. The boss is sweating profusely and tells Thompson to calm down. Mark asks the prosecutor where John Black is, and she glares at him, saying that she understands his circumstances. But now the game is big. Thompson repeats the question, but the woman says that she is not going to babysit him. Without John, it will not be possible to prove Skycastin's involvement. Mark says that since she acts her way, he will do the same. He is about to leave, but she calls out to him, asking if he is a detective, which makes all his veins bulge. Chen and Hound enter the hospital. The attendant tries to shoo them away, saying that access is only for the families of patients. They need to leave. The captain says that if she doesn't get out of the way now, they will charge her with obstruction of the investigation. At this moment, the prosecutor appears behind him and asks how they can conduct an investigation without a warrant. He turns to her and asks if she doesn't know that androids have priority rights. The woman with many of her agents behind her says that she forbids them to go further and orders them to stand still. Chen tells Hound to neutralize all those who would interfere with public service. The woman shouts that they seem to have decided to ruin their reputation for the second time. But at that moment, a man comes out and says that the girl is not here. Mark is driving somewhere in a car. Leah Baum is sleeping peacefully in the back seat. He recalls how he received information about the place 5 years ago and arrived there. John sits at the table and asks if Nikolai allows himself too much. Black can only spare a couple of minutes for himself. He says that it's just business, but John knows that he is a professional. He asks if they sent him from Blue Magic. Nikolai only says that his current target has risen well. Now he is also trash. John chuckles, and Mark appears behind the killer. He puts a gun to his head and tells him to stop making a fuss. Suddenly, a series of shots occurs as a result of which everyone remains unharmed. Mark says that Nikolai is about to fly into prison like a darling. Then he drops the killer and tells him to shut the door and get some sleep with a kick to the head. Mark exchanges glances with Black, who picked up Nikolai's shotgun, then puts the gun down and says it was a good job. Already on the street, Lockdown throws his coat on John. He asks if Mark would like to have a glass. Thompson tells Black not to relax because he didn't catch him just because he needs Nikolai today. John jokes, saying that why would the detective do this right away, because he was the respectable citizen who reported the contract murder. Mark wonders how Black has the nerve to call himself a citizen after how many people he has ruined with his drugs. He will definitely send him to jail. John says that it seems that the detective had a child. Maybe he shouldn't waste his precious time on unnecessary troubles. Mark is glad that he brought up this topic. Black's baby is just about 6 months old. If he's worried about him, then don't throw up any surprises and give in an amicable way. Another policeman asks if Mark really has problems in his head. Why did he go there without reinforcements? That he has a few more lives left. Mark picks his ears and doesn't feel any problems in his behavior at all. Is the neighbor really offering to crowd in so that they can be spotted again? The future boss says that Mark doesn't even justify why he didn't touch Black, by the way. He wonders what he would show him. Is it really an unpaid bill at a restaurant? They must not forget to be careful. The idiots from Sky Caston will simply run away. The current police chief tells them to stop arguing. Thompson still doesn't return empty-handed. Mark is very happy about the praise from the commander, at that moment when the neighbor was not told anything, because he personally infiltrated several people. They will soon find out information about the deal. The commander says that now it will be enough for Mark to put Nikolai down and watch Black, and most importantly, not to be detected. John says that the supply is less because they are being monitored by the investigation team. Getting them out of the mine has become more difficult. The man asks again, and then wonders why they are still intact, despite all the chaos that they are creating in the city. Black says that he just misspoke. There's just a particularly persistent detective in the group who gets in the way. The man advises to take appropriate measures and not leave traces, of course. Otherwise, John's child will never grow up without food. A little girl eagerly devolves a burger the size of her head. Mark tells his daughter not to rush, otherwise she will get indigestion. He asks if she really wants burgers that bad. She says no, she just wanted to grow up quickly. Thompson wonders if her friends call her little. The girl says that this is not so. She just wants to grow up more, because she will soon become an older sister. Mark is very surprised. His wife says that she is already in her 4th week. She wanted to surprise him. He gets up from his seat with joy, and then apologizes for the noise to the visitors. The girl decides to return to the restaurant because she forgot her rabbit. Mark says that he is now running to get her. He returns to the restaurant and takes away the cute little toy with a smile on his face. His family is walking peacefully near the restaurant. The girl is jumping joyfully. But then Mark notices Lockdown nearby, whom he had previously seen with John. He runs as fast as he can from the restaurant to make it while they get into the car and calls his wife. But the explosives installed under the car are inexorable. The explosion spreads throughout the area, killing the past and future in Mark. The manager of the Cat's Eye restaurant asks for forgiveness, but says that they are already closed, and then realizes that Mark has come with a child in his arms. A police car drives by. Thompson is hiding in the alley. It seems to have passed by. He realizes that someone who has a photo of Mark is approaching to check the gateway. Thompson is about to pull out a gun, but the restaurant manager runs out and shouts that a suspicious person is following her, distracting the patrolman. He asks where her pursuer is. She shows the direction. She says that he followed on her heels, and then turned into an alley on the opposite side. The patrolman goes after him. Mark exhales. Thompson appears in the interior of the restaurant. There is a girl playing with a cat. He asks if she is bored. She says that no, because she is playing with Aurora. But when her dad comes, he wanted to find something and return for her. Mark says her dad seems to be delayed, so they'll go see him when he calls. Thompson says that he now owes manager Cat's Eye a lot. She says it's nothing, and also that she left the message he asked for. This is the first time she's seen so much police in the area. She says that this is nothing. She still has enough equipment to help him, even if he stays here. He says he doesn't hope so because he doesn't want to involve her too much in his affairs. However, Mark is very grateful that she did not leave him and accepted him. She only says that she did it because she wanted to. Hannah asks why she was kicked out of the investigation. The man says that Meg is being repaired, and her wounds have not yet healed. But she believes that this is not true. They just think that the girl will not be able to arrest her commander. The man grabs his face and says that she learned to show character while working with Mark. She says that it is really strange that he was put on the wanted list so quickly, and that he kidnapped this girl in the first place. He says that now he will explain everything to her. Hannah already knows that the Thompson family died in an explosion caused by terrorists. Jack says that the organizer was none other than John Black, the boss of the cartel, and Mark is pursuing him. After that incident, he threw all his energy into searching for Black. But during the operation, there was a data leak, which caused many people to suffer. For this, Thompson was temporarily suspended from his post and transferred to the search department. Hannah asks if they didn't say that John died. Hugh says that not then. But when Mark was being watched for 6 months, at that time the Blue Magic Cartel increased its influence. As a result, that cartel absorbed Black's group, and they began to consider him killed. But later it turned out that he was under the protection of the prosecutor's office for the sake of their secret operation. Hannah says that the commander took Leah Baum because she is Black's daughter. Hugh says that she is thinking in the right direction. The scientist says that it is possible to reduce the activity of aperignol if the reaction is compressed, but the pressure continues to increase. Because of this, in the worst case, a monstrous explosion can occur. The vice president says he remembers the man saying he was able to keep everything under control. He says that in theory it was possible, but he did not know that this would happen in practice. Jace asks if there is any alternative. The scientist says that it is possible to reduce the pressure through unpleasant manipulations. The second scientist says that the first one is out of his mind. If you turn off the power plant even for a short time, the entire city will be left without electricity. He says he knows. Maybe that's why the first group of developers were against it. The scientist wants to ask them for help, but the vice president reminds with whose help he got to this place, and it is also impossible for society to learn about their inability to control. Nikolai calls the departing Jace. The man asks the criminal to speak only on business. He says that he found the game he was sent for, but there is another one nearby. Jace says that he can handle the costs. Let him do it, first Black, then Mark. However, the case was still pushed too hard due to the cooperation of the prosecutor's office, so they need the most optimal plan to find him first. Thompson's current boss asks if it would be better to quietly start looking for him. The boss says that this is the only way they can help Mark in order to delay his murder of John Black. Doesn't his boss understand that Mark himself knows what he's done? Thompson's boss says that Mark could do something bad, and the same thing will happen to him as happened to his current boss. Meg and Hannah enter the office with permission. The boss asks what issue they are on. The girl says that she found a secret message written by the commander, which is supposedly addressed to Black. Mark's boss is surprised how she managed to find this. He praises her for her work and asks what it says. She says that she will only tell what is in the note if she gets help in catching Mark. The boss thinks it's a joke. The boss of the entire police force asks her name and says that he wants to help implement the arrest plan, so he will ask one question. He asks if she's sure she could shoot her commander if she saw him kill someone right in front of her. With a serious face, she says no, but they will stop him before he commits an irreversible act. John says that he came as he was asked. Why doesn't he see his daughter here? Mark tells Black to first get rid of all the weapons he has on him. John obediently throws away everything, even what he hid in his leg. Now he is clean. Thompson comes out and says that now they can talk. Black is very surprised that it was he who stole his daughter. He begins to sweat. John says that he understands that the detective is angry as hell about the incident, but if he is allowed to explain, it will make him feel a little less guilty. Mark asks if, after so many years, he really asks to explain everything. He really thought that Thompson had forgotten the past. The fugitive policeman says that he will send John to his daughter, where he will have the opportunity to repent of his sins. The criminal's face takes on an emotion of horror. Mark asks if he really thinks Thompson won't be able to do the same. Black rushes at the policeman, but he kicks him in the stomach, which makes the man fall. Thompson asks who he raised his hand to. John rushes at the detective and orders him to say what he did to his daughter. A suffocated Mark asks if it will suit him if he says that his daughter is on the verge of life and death. Black, in a panic, releases the detective and says that his daughter is not guilty of anything. She doesn't even know anything. Mark says that the criminal's excuses will not affect him. His wife and daughter also did nothing wrong. John falls to his knees and tearfully prays that Thompson will let his daughter live. He will give up all the information he has, even his life if necessary. Mark puts a gun to his head while he says that he can even bring a red box. Does Black really think that the detective's family will be resurrected because he will be on his knees? No, he will personally pay for everything. Thompson will send him to the next world along with his daughter. Magnum and Hannah appear behind them and ask the commander to wait. The android tells Mark to calm down. His emotional background is seriously exceeding the norm. Thompson says that he is calm itself and orders him to take the girl away. Meg says she can't do this because the commander's safety comes first and he is unable to obey orders. The detective shouts that this tin can even nose. He orders them to get lost. They only anger him even more. Hannah asks the commander to calm down. Does he really think that his family would want revenge? His actions are irrational. How will he therefore cope with the consequences? She asks him to come to his senses for the sake of his family, and he remembers the words of Hunt, who said that the detective. The girl continues to ask Mark to come to his senses. He was once a respected head of the family. It is not yet time to come to his senses and save his name. Mark gets mad and shoots in the air to shut up his subordinate. Hannah says the operation is over and asks for the detention to be lifted, while John cries on his knees. She says now they'll just move on to Black's trial. John, in tears, opens the door of the car in which his daughter was waiting for him. Now he cries with happiness. The girl jumps out of the car and says that she really missed him and doesn't want to be alone in the hospital anymore. He even more tearfully asks for forgiveness from his little daughter. John praises her because she was able to endure this alone. Hannah asks if everything is okay with the commander. He asks not to bother him over trifles and to launch the court system. Suddenly, the android shouts that there is a launcher nearby. They need to find cover. Nikolai launches the rocket launcher, and after the explosion, he himself goes down to the place to make sure the task is completed. He is happy that all the victims are in one place. It's time for them to start the party. The criminal finds only the body of some girl here, and then Meg attacks him. The detective pulls out the barely alive John, who says that he knows that Mark will never forgive him, but he begs to save his daughter. He hands over some kind of key, and Thompson says that he doesn't have to worry about his daughter. The android and Hannah are with her, after which Black laughs and dies. Hugh and the police boss notice the explosion and realize that this shouldn't have happened. There is no connection with the security. Then they try to call the special forces. Jack says he didn't apply. The boss insists that he apply immediately because there are too few people here. Hannah wakes up to see Leah Baum lying on the floor of a destroyed building. She comes up, takes her in her arms and asks her to wake up, and in general it's time for her to get up. Magnum asks Hannah to leave and shields her from Nikolai's barrage of bullets, after which he falls, as if turned off. The girl tries to call him. The girl tries to guess who the cyborg serves, but he says that the tin can was faster than the rat. That's not bad. And the girl is a boring prey, so let her sit quietly, then he will kill her quickly. At this moment, a blue beam appears and blows up the cyborg, while Hannah and the girl hide behind the rubble. The significantly crippled Nikolai tries to understand what hooked him. He understands that only Mad Dog has such a gun. The head of the entire police sits in a distant building with a sniper rifle and says that the cyborg is retreating. Even if he is not as good as before, the subordinate says that this is not so. He is the only one who can match the reaction of an angry cyborg. Mark's boss asks if he came here because he knew what would happen. He gets into a serious pose and says that he actually came to shoot Thompson. If he wants to mess things up, he is sincerely glad that it didn't come to that. Mark says that the injured child should be taken to the hospital as quickly as possible. Thompson sees that John is dead and then looks at Meg, who has suffered quite a bit. The android says that with such damage he will not be able to fight, but he is quite capable of moving. He congratulates the boss on his victory over emotions. Thompson says he didn't actually do anything. The boss confirms this and says it will take a very long time to clean up his mess. Mark says that he warned that he could cause problems. The boss wants to rush at him with his fists, but Hugh holds him back. The prosecutor in the interrogation room asks Mark if he understands what he's done. They've been preparing for the operation for so long, and he ruined everything. Hugh and his boss are watching from behind the glass. He asks if it is really his fault. If she did not think through such an outcome and is not able to carry out the operation, she could at least have warned him. She sternly slams her palm on the table and says that no one could be trusted. Does Thompson really think that he only failed the operation? Because of him, the child was left an orphan. Mark says that he understands that the ice block is trying to play on his emotions. In fact, she does not care about the girl at all. He asks her to admit if it is true that she is more angry because of her inability to find the red box. She recoils and asks in surprise where he got the information about this, how he found out. Thompson smiles slyly and says that there needs to be someone he can trust before he says anything. The boss asks Jack what the red box is. The guy assumes that it is probably some kind of significant evidence left by Black. The boss asks if Hugh and Thompson communicate normally. Did he really say anything? He says not a word. The boss is furious and thinks that Mark has again decided that he is the coolest and can handle everything alone. The prosecutor says that Thompson should wait for the lawsuit since he is guilty in this whole situation. Mad Dog says that first they need to get Mark back by any means possible. He asks his people to stall for time while he tries to find some way out. Some person says that the prosecutor's office is handling the legal process over the detective. Some of the androids do not have any authority in this regard. Chen asks if he doesn't know that the special aporiginal law presupposes executive power, so let him get out of the way. Someone is surprised how this is so. The police are interfering with the implementation of the law. The boss says that he is only explaining how it works. The prosecutor's office has already taken care of this, so you need to wait. The vice president says that the androids exist to speed up this process, so let the police not waste their precious time and let them inside. The chief of all police appears and says that he will take Jace to Detective Thompson. He tells Mark's boss that stalling further at this stage could cause problems. It is better to listen to the verdict and stall for time if any inconsistencies come to light. Mad Dog says, I didn't think that the vice president would come here in person. Is there really any special reason? Jace says that he is also an employee, and therefore he needs to sometimes appear and personally monitor the process so that people can trust them. Chen proposes starting a trial in the case of Mark Thompson. The detective says it's such a funny sight. He's trying so hard to curry favor. Hound, on command, starts the trial mode of the detective, while Chen says that the end of Mark has come. It's too late to joke. The court says that the detective is accused of violating the aporiginal law, kidnapping a child, and manslaughter. Meg tells Hannah that he was sentenced to death. Mark's boss shouts how, based on the available data, it is even possible to make a contract on the death penalty. This is impossible. Chen says that androids never joke. There can be no mistake in the verdict. and then he smiles slyly. Mad Dog asks if he is really sure and takes full responsibility for his words. Chen begins to hesitate, but the vice president speaks for him that he is sure that this is not a person prone to subjectivity, but an android that can at least simultaneously conduct 3 trials, regardless of the place and time. There are no flaws in their system. Chen says his boss explained everything perfectly. Can they continue? He takes out a gun and asks if Mark wants to say something before he dies. The boss says that he is a bastard, and at Thompson's silence he laughs that he swallowed his tongue. He thought that the detective would at least look up. And then Chen says it's time for them to say goodbye and puts a gun to Mark's forehead. At this moment, Hannah and Magnum burst into the office. They say that they need to wait. This process is invalid. Chen shouts that this is nonsense, and the verdict has already been passed. The girl says that they have a preemptive right to conduct the trial, since Meg was the first to arrive at the crime scene. The Magnum may be autonomous, but the system is too, so according to Hannah, no problem should arise, so Meg will issue a new sentence. The vice president has no objections. The android connects to the court system, detecting Hound's connection. Meg says that the detective is accused of violating the Aparignola law and suspicion of child abduction, as well as manslaughter. The sentence is 3 years in prison and 5 probation. Hannah says that with the same system, 2 androids gave different verdicts, which means the system is broken, and this requires further consideration. Chen shouts that this is nonsense, since the case has already been decided. The girl shouts in response that he himself said that it is important to respect the right of priority in the consideration of the case, and now he wants to change the decision in a direction convenient for himself. The vice president says that enough arguing, they will deal with this problem, and then they will come back. Because they themselves said that the system should not make different decisions, he recommends not telling the press about today's incident. The boss tells Chuck, Thompson's boss, that their forces may not be enough, so outside help may be needed. He says that this will be done in the near future. Hannah says that she will try to get the commander out. He just needs to be patient a little. He smiles and says that he has already survived only thanks to them. The prosecutor tells the police chief that the information was conveyed to her in general terms. Are they really not going to cooperate, even after they saw what Sky Caston was doing? Chuck says that to start cooperating, the prosecutor's office must first stop hiding information. Let it join the investigation if it has something to say. She says it's time to end this, so she provides a warrant and permission signed by the Ministry of Justice, and will also bring a detective to headquarters on Monday. Mad Dog wonders if the inspector really thinks that her persistence will force Mark to talk to her. The girl with a dissatisfied face says that she will somehow make him talk to her. The police chief says that everything is moving faster than he thought. Chuck says that he has already given all the instructions, so if everything goes according to plan, they will meet on time. Hannah is in the hospital monitoring the condition of little Leah Bohm, who is still under the supervision of doctors. Then Hugh appears. They go out onto the balcony together. He says that the boss told him everything about the case. He asks what she initially wanted to do. She says that she didn't really plan anything. She just wanted to save the commander. Then Jack smiles widely and asks what she would do if Magnum made the same decision. The girl smiles and says that she didn't have time to think about it, although it was hard for her to imagine how Meg could sentence Thompson to death. He says that now he is ready to believe that she is his exact copy, and the android is a completely different story. The girl says that she herself understood everything only when it was all over. Hugh says that this time the danger has passed, but the girl says that the prosecutor's office and Sky Caston will not give up so easily. The guy nods. He says that the prosecutor's office has already begun to move, and Sky Caston will definitely find some excuse to intervene, because they are restless. He says that as long as Mark remains silent, circumstances will continue to drag on. The circumstances are very difficult. Then Jack asks if she trusts Thompson enough to go with him to the end. Hannah says even though he made a mistake, she wants to follow him and believe in him until the very end. Then he thinks it's time for her to take a vacation. Chuck shows up at Cat's Eye and says that he and Hellcat, or rather Dasha, haven't seen each other for a long time. She greets him warmly, extremely surprised by his appearance. He asks how things are with the clients. Is everything okay? The woman says that this place mainly lives off regular customers. The man laughs. Why didn't Mark invite him here if he knew very well about this place? Dasha says that she doesn't know why Chuck came, but he understands that she won't say anything that could harm Mark. The man says that the android sentenced Thompson to death. Objects are almost falling from her hands, but he says that she has not yet listened to the end. A discrepancy was discovered, and the case was postponed. She asks what they need from her. He says that he wants to offer her something unofficial and even illegal, so they themselves cannot do this. He wonders if she understands what he is getting at. Hellcat tries to resist, but he asks to listen to the end. They are not doing this for themselves, but to save Thompson. He is interested in what she thinks now. She leans her elbows on the counter, smiling, and says that he can tell you in more detail what they are planning. Mark is put into a car belonging to the prosecutor's office and taken away. Hugh confirms that the prosecutor has begun transporting the detective. Chen says that's great. It's time for them to start performing the operation. The prosecutor's office car is stopped by Chen and Hound. The soldiers ask what they are doing. They say that they arrived with the android for the investigation. Let them get out of the car. The android rips out the door by the roots. Mark's face is illuminated by a bright light. But for some reason, Meg, Hellcat, and Hannah meet him. He begins to mumble something indistinctly, not understanding what is happening. And Dasha says that first, they need to get out of here, since they should have already noticed everything. At this moment, Chen does not understand why the inside of the van is empty. The prosecutor calls Chuck and says this is how they behave now, to which he says that they themselves don't understand anything. After that, she tells Mad Dog not to pretend like they don't know anything. Chuck says that kidnapping a detective in this way is like giving Sky Caston a knife. The man frowns and says that they allocated 2 transport ports and sent them to different places. So who is to blame that the androids and some other group opened them? She asks if they will continue to deny everything, she says. Let them do as they want. But she won't leave it that easily. Chuck smiles and tells her to try. He will be happy to watch her figure out the security that they have so lame. Iceblock starts to say something, but Mad Dog turns off the transmission and says not to provoke her too much. He asks how everything went. Chuck says that everyone is safe. Everything went exactly according to plan. The group gets out of the car. Hannah didn't think it was so spacious. Dasha gives her a towel to dry herself. Mark wonders what they were all thinking about, whether they think it's all a joke. Hannah says that they are extremely serious, and Thompson says that she should stop kidding, and they took him back before it was too late. Is Dasha really there too? She herself said that she wants an ordinary life, and now she's sitting in these catacombs. Hannah asks him to stop. They are on an unofficial task from the police and the department. They have a week to find the red box and evidence against Sky Caston to clear his name. Mark says that the bosses are simply out of their minds, and Hannah says that she is in charge of the operation, so technically, now, she is his commander, and not vice versa. Dasha says that his boss explained the whole situation to her, so now she is here as a temporary operative, so she will try to make every effort to help them. Mark tells them to stop acting like nothing happened. No one knows how this could end. Any mistake could cost them all their lives. Hannah tells him that he can say whatever he wants. She still won't back down, and she honestly doesn't think he can handle it alone. And in general, it would be better to think about what to do next, instead of lashing out like that. Dasha praises the girl for being so determined. Hellcat likes this. He says that since they are asking so, he has one condition. Hannah doesn't have enough experience to order the others, so he will be in charge, and if anyone disobeys, he will immediately remove himself. Everyone accepts this condition, and Hannah even smiles widely with joy. Some heavily armed people emerge from a giant plane. The inspector introduces himself. The captain of the people introduces himself as Ron Cheho. He asks to report on the situation. She says that according to operational data, Magnum should be at the police warehouse, but he has not been there for a day. She assumes that he is with his commander. The man nods and says that his team will begin the search immediately. She wants them to help her, but they say that they were given a task, either to return the android or to destroy it, and what the prosecutor's office wants does not concern them. He hopes that now she understands that from now on, it is the prosecutor who is cooperating with them, and not they with her. The soldiers give her an hour to convey all the information they need. Mark puts the key on the table and says that the bar is called the Devil's Chair, and the key to the 821 box in which alcohol is stored, the name of Beth 69 whiskey, there should be evidence inside. Dasha says that that bar is unusual. Cartel members gather there, so she'll go for whiskey. Mark says that they may still remember her there, so he will go there, since now the bar belongs to Blue Magic. She says that in light of recent events, several interested parties are hunting for him, and she also heard that the cartel is extremely sensitive to the issue of his capture. Hannah says that since they have such problems, then she will go there, and a minute will be enough for her to get anywhere. Mark says, "Didn't she hear? In a second they will understand that she is from the police." The girl says that if not her, then they will stand here all day. Hellcat says that Hannah is indeed a better fit than both of them, and she will find someone who can help her inside. Mark says that if she feels even the slightest threat, she should leave immediately. Jace is introduced to a new development of photon shields. It allows him to not wear a separate suit for protection, since it is superimposed on the one he is already wearing. He asks when it will be possible to use it. The scientist says that at least now, but the duration of the effect is now in question. But the vice president asks to deliver one to his office today. Nikolai comes up and asks why he only received half the amount. Isn't this a violation of their contract? Jace turns around and says that he didn't catch Mark, and even broke 2 reinforced suits. Is he really not satisfied with half of it? The criminal smiles and says that this is all collateral damage. Is Jace really the vice president and not a gangster? And then asks for the full amount. The vice president shocks him and asks if, after talking with him a little, Nikolai felt like a human being. He tells the criminal to remember that he is just a dog. They will tell him to bite. He will bite. He will tell him to bark. He will bark. Jace asks if he understands, and when he doesn't hear anything, he shocks him again, after which he says that he understands everything. The vice president says he got away with a warning this time, but next time the cost could be his life. Hannah imposingly walks into the cartel bar as if she comes here every day. Everyone around is looking at her, and the bartender asks what she will order. She hands over the key to cell 821 and says that she needs the whiskey she is looking for. The employee says that he has not seen her here before. Who will she be? She is called a freelancer. She says that she works everywhere. The bartender grabs her hand and says that outsiders don't know about this place. How did she get here? She repeats that she is a freelancer, she was asked, so she came. People around begin to stand up from their seats. He says that she is not a freelancer. Let her say who sent her. She repeats once again that she is a freelancer and does not disclose information about clients, so let him let go of her hand already. An old man who knows Mark appears and says that it was he who called her on business at the workshop. Thompson says that he already thought that everything was lost, but thanks to an old acquaintance, she is still alive. He says that Dasha asked him, but for him he wouldn't lift a finger, so let him thank her. She says that he helped after all, so he should thank him. She says that she wants to ask him for something else and points out the data that was in the bottle. It's not easy to open it, so only the old man can probably handle it. But he agrees. But it will take a lot of time with such and such equipment. One of the brothers says that this equipment is their flesh and blood. It cannot be bad. Mark says that he will be in the old man's debt if he does it as quickly as possible. He says that Thompson is already deeply in debt. Hellcat asks him to stop. Hannah also asks for help. The old man puts his hand on his head and says that Mark would not have gotten anything if it weren't for these girls. Hunters for Mag show up at the bar and show portraits of Magnum, Hannah, and Thompson, asking if they have been seen here. The bartender asks if they really have bananas in their ears. He said that they haven't opened yet, so they don't accept anyone. The security takes out pistols, and the bartender says that the policeman will regret not taking the opportunity to leave here on his own 2 feet. One of Ron's men instantly kills the guards, and the commander himself says that now the bartender regrets mistaking them for the police. The scientist on the recording says that the aporignal power plant is very dangerous. The simulation shows that it eventually explodes, despite its short lifespan. He says that it is not too late. If the station is stopped and a new system is developed, the damage can be minimized. If anyone has concerns about the station, then they are quite justified. There are also problems with the new Android models. They are trained too one-sidedly. As a result, everyone who interferes with the Psy-Caston aporignal project is placed on special lists and made sure that they receive serious punishments. The lists are updated in real time, and for complete control over the system, they want to privatize the justice system. He himself is in great danger due to the disclosure of this information, but he cannot stay away. The aporignal station will explode. Psy-Caston must be stopped. He shows the container that Mark's team now has and says that he has collected all the evidence in this box. Dasha says that it is only allowed to take weapons that will not cause the station to explode. You will have to rely on close combat and electricity. Everyone exchanges the cartridges in their weapons for shock charges. The drones at the station use rubber cartridges, but they don't feel much different from combat ones. The old man says that on the way to the control panel, everything is teeming with them. There are at least 100 of them. He asks if Mark is sure that he wants to do this. He says that they all saw that if they fail, then in 10 hours the station will turn into one huge bomb. The old man says that he understood all this without snot. He just could have passed it on to the necessary organs. Why bother going there yourself? Mark says that the station will already blow up along with the nearest city while they analyze the information. The old man says that even if it works, he will be arrested for breaking equipment and trespassing. Is he ready for that? Thompson asks why he became a police officer then. Precisely because there is no place for cowards. Everyone has gathered and is ready to begin the operation under the command of their commander. Mark says that he really owes the old man a big debt, so when he returns, he will definitely repay. The old man laughs and says Thompson doesn't even know if he'll get out of there alive. The old man looks at the cameras and sees that some kind of armed group is approaching them. The screens don't work, and Meg says it's the work of the special unit he used to belong to. Thompson asks if the android knows why they are here. Magnum says that he cannot say now, but in 2 minutes they will be here. The team asks if there is a back door somewhere that will lead them out of here. The old man says that of course he is, but they will quickly find out about him. Meg says that she will distract them while the others leave, but Hannah insists on staying with him. Meg says that he has a better chance alone, so Mark says that he is forbidden to kill, but he is also forbidden to die, and he must definitely return. The special squad is slowly moving forward. They launch a drone ahead to find out the situation. They are about to enter the facility, but just at this time, Magnum destroys their robot. The squad hides behind containers, and Meg arrives to them in person. They say that they have not seen the android for a long time, and that he needs to lay down his weapons. Magnum says that he cannot carry out their orders. Then the squad leader presses the button, and the explosive behind the android's back detonates. It flies off onto the container, but there are no visible signs of obvious damage on it, but it turns out to be right above them. The squad shoots at him to drive him away, and then they tell him to let them detain him. The android says that he cannot carry out this order either, and breaks the machine gun in the hands of one of the operatives. He pulls out a gun and asks when Meg will fall into their hands. The man behind him tells Jordan to keep his head down and aims in that direction. The commander gives the order to detain Magnum, who dodged, and he will cover the entire team, except Hyunwoo. The captain jumps out from behind the wall and begins to pour lead over the entire affected area. Magnum approaches him to disarm him, but he uses a shock charge on the wall. After the electric shock, Meg looks damaged. In some places, the suit has melted. Then the commander approaches him and asks why the android did not use a weapon. He says that the commander ordered to operate in non-lethal mode at 50% power. The guy behind him understands why the android, whom they know well, was so slow. The captain asks why Magnum started working with terrorists. Damaged Car says that he decided that his actions were within the bounds of the law, so he still acted in the interests of the country and its citizens. Another soldier says that something is fishy here. If the android started receiving conflicting orders, the system would stop it. The commander squats down and asks to tell him the purpose of the operation, as well as the logs of its implementation. He asks for forgiveness, but the captain is not his master now. A person uses their eye implant with the first level of privacy and requests access to the data. Magnum says that the secret code has been confirmed. He opens the log. Chen stands in front of his brothers, beaten until they bleed, and asks if they got there. He picks up the flash drive from them and understands why they ran away from him like that. Chen asks the elder where Mark is now. If he doesn't tell him, he'll blow his brother's head off. The man shoots him in the arm, after which the guy gives up and says that they were heading to the Aporignal station. Sky Caston's office reports via intercom that according to current indicators, the critical threshold will be exceeded within 8 hours. The scientist tells Jace that they ran the simulation using 7 other programs, but they all said the same thing. The vice president asks what will happen in the end. The developer says that the station will no longer be able to contain the Aporignal. They will lose control over this process. Jace wonders if this means the station will explode, and who else knows about it? The scientist says that it does, but only he knows. The vice president asks how things are going at the station itself. The head of research reports that the entire staff has been withdrawn from there. The sector is working offline. Jace is furious at Chen's appearance. He says that of course he can kill him right away, but he better see what he brought. He shows in his hands the very red box with which Black threatened the vice president. It is impossible to copy information from such a medium. Jace asks the perplexed minion what he wants done to her now. Then Chen adds that Mark is now heading to the Aporignal power plant to stop work. Since he looked at the red flash drive, the captain says that this time he can neutralize him. Jace says God doesn't play dice and says it's time for Nicholas to go hunting. The team deals with the hacking of the system. The old man says that if you open the door right now, the security system will not detect them for another 2 minutes, during which time they must get to the central elevator. Mark says he understands, and then enters the reinforced door with Hellcat and Hannah. They run along corridors filled with red light. Dasha says that they need to go up to the next floor and then take the elevator. After this, they see almost an army of androids at the end of the corridor and realize that the information they purchased is slightly outdated. The cars open fire. Mark tries to shoot back at them as he runs. Along with them is an old man with an ion machine gun who kills the androids on the spot. While the men are fighting back, the female part of the group tries to break into the next door. Hannah screams that it has opened, but then the android rushes at her. Hellcat hits him with her electric staff, smashing him to pieces. The girls tell everyone to go through the door they opened before it's too late. The door is jammed, so the old man stays there. He tells them to go up immediately and disable the security system. Dasha also remains below and shouts for Mark not to hesitate, but to run on. Mark and Hannah quickly run up the stairs to get there while their friends are safe. While they are running, Thompson abruptly stops the girl, and an explosion occurs in front of them. In the middle of the hall stands a gigantic fighting machine that could mistake a man for an ant. They successfully fight off several units from it, but one of the attacks hits Mark, and Hannah, in a rage, continues to shoot at the car. She begins to reload the gun with her back turned, thinking that the robot is finished. However, he begins to emit a lot of light through his visor, and soon an android from the Hound series appears. A giant robot dog lunges at him, but he knocks it out with one blow. He then flies high into the air to perform a finishing attack. At this moment, Hannah runs up to the injured commander, who tries to say that he is fine. The android appears behind them and warns them that they must lay down their weapons and surrender. After this, the girl turns around and shoots her shock charges at him, hitting the target exactly. However, the machine doesn't care, so he delivers a swift blow, throwing Hannah away. Mark screams, but at that moment, Meg appears out of nowhere, snatches the girl, and asks if she is okay. Meg tells the commander to go to the control center. Here he will sort it out himself. The special squad talks with the prosecutor. They say that if the data from his memory is correct, then the power plant will blow up in a couple of hours, to which the woman only asks if they are going to arrest him. Ron says that now it is more important not to detain, but to prevent an explosion, and the police cannot go there alone. Since the security is carried out by a private company, it is also important to evacuate the residents. The Mad Dog says that 2 million people live near the station. Even if we notify them now, it is unknown how many will survive. We can only hope for Mark. The prosecutor shouts that the station may not explode, but a forced shutdown will definitely leave the entire area without electricity. She doesn't want to take responsibility for this. Thompson needs to be arrested immediately. The police chief looks her straight in the eye and asks who she thinks will take responsibility for the deaths of 2 million people. Iceblock says that if she had been given the red box right away, this would not have happened. The head cop says that if the box had been given to her, then she would only now begin to establish the reliability of the information. Ron says they can shout whatever they want, but he has already given permission for Magnum to help Thompson. Mad Dog leaves and says that he will notify his superiors about the situation and try to prevent a blackout. But the prosecutor furiously asks who he is going to report to, the government, or maybe the National Assembly. The boss says that he once saved the life of the president in the East, so he will probably listen to him. Mark rides the elevator impatiently, planning his next steps. He enters the control room and sees the fresh corpse of some scientist there. Thompson puts a gun to the back of Chen's head and says that he knew that his soul was vile, but he didn't think it was that much, however. Now it's all over. Behind him, Jay says that it's all over for Mark. Let him drop the gun. While Thompson only has time to say hello, the captain is already striking him in the face. Mark tells Chen to be sure that Thompson will catch him. He laughs, saying that they are cut off from the outside world. No one even knows that he is here. The captain asks if he should get rid of the detective, but the vice president says that Chen will die first and shoots him in the forehead. Mark yells at him to stop. It's not too late to stop and give up. Thompson says that the police already have evidence of his crimes and the station will soon explode. Jace shows the flash drive and asks if this is the evidence we're talking about. He breaks the box and says that Mark just became the worst terrorist in history. How does he feel? Thompson doesn't understand, but Jace says that now everyone will think that he blew up the station and not the result of a technical error. He smiles evilly and says that all evidence to the contrary will be destroyed by the explosion. Thompson shouts that 2 million people will die. Does he really care? The vice president says that it doesn't matter. It wasn't the stupid masses who came up with the idea of using coal either. And the development of aperignal energy will create eternal coal, so that when it does, everyone will shut up and eat what it gives, so that some deaths will not interfere with the great work. Mark says that he would like to sleep it off, by the way. Prison is a great place for this, but it's not a fact that Jace will like it there. Nikolai appears from behind and says that he didn't know that the boss also likes parties. Thompson is surprised that these two are together. The criminal laughs. Has the detective just realized? He loses his grip. Jace asks what happened to the rest of the rat cubs. Nikolai says that they can do something else, but they are unlikely to survive. Cyborg asks if the price will be double for both. The vice president leaves and says that he should catch him first before raising the issue. Nikolai notices that the boss often curses. Where have his manners gone? Jace prepares an electric shock and says that apparently crawling on his knees is better for Nikolai. Cyborg says that he was joking. Now they will quickly sort it out, and they can leave. Mark gets his leg pierced with a laser, but he asks what the bastard did to Dasha and the old man. Cyborg says that they will meet soon, so he will ask himself, since they are such good friends, he will definitely send Mark to them. Suddenly, Nikolai attacks Jace, who in bewilderment asks what he is doing. Cyborg asks if the vice president was going to get rid of all the evidence, including him. He says that of course that's what he planned to do, so it's time for Nikolai. Cyborg asks if Jace really thought he could continue to control him. How dare he? He shows small wires. This is an activator that he pulled out of himself. In business, you always need to have your ace up your sleeve, and then he rushes at the former owner. He just says that the criminal is an idiot and presses the same button again. Nikolai is struck by a strong current. Blood begins to flow from his mouth and nose. Jace says that having an ace is correct, but the cyborg did not take into account that he has 2 aces. Nikolai's remains are just smoking sadly, and the vice president thinks that the duration of his suit, however, is not flawless. Mark says that if Jace moves, he will shoot him, to which he reports that he acted in self-defense, which he does now, releasing a drone that knocks the weapon out of Thompson's hands and then says it's time for them to leave. While Jace says that Mark did a good job, Nikolai attacks from behind with all his strength. The attack is successful. The vice president begins to bleed. He does not believe that he will die like this. Cyborgo says that no one dares write him off until he gives his permission. Only Thompson remains alive in the room. The system says that the oporonol pressure has exceeded the 8th level. All employees need to leave the station. Mark approaches the computer. The station's artificial intelligence asks how he can help. He says that an immediate forced shutdown of the reactor is required, to which the system says that confirmation is needed. Thompson removes the watch from Jace and puts it on the console for identification. The controller is confirmed. The system carries out the order. Mark looks at the screens, which are rapidly losing signal with the server. The system malfunctions and an emergency stop is impossible, but the detective decides to do something different. Thompson, despite warnings about vision loss, uses the most sensitive targeting mode. Blood is oozing from his eyes, and he thinks that he would like to see his family one last time. The city plunges into darkness. He still manages to get into one part of the reactor. There is some kind of police conference. The journalist asks if it is true that an android participated in the operation. Under the control of military forces, the representative says that the information is classified. Another person says that freelancers and another detective were involved. Can they comment on this? Hannah says that is not true. Another person says that she should be considered a hero because she saved 2 million people from death. But others say that she was the culprit of a massive blackout and should be arrested. The girl says that if she found herself in a similar situation again, she would do the same. News reports say that prosecutors are investigating Vice President Jace's corruption that led to the plant accident. They will also conduct an investigation into the entire scheme for developing the Aperignol station. Chuck says it's good that the attention is now focused on Hannah. They want to give her a presidential medal and give her a special promotion. He says, doesn't it seem to the boss that they are only losing by pretending that they didn't know anything? Although if this is the price of reducing Thompson's punishment, then so be it. Mad Dog says that this is only to their advantage. Now the excitement will subside and political squabbles will begin. And many of those who were hiding will come out again. Due to the cessation of the judicial system of the android Sky Caston, the cartels will come to life again. Hugh says that the worst rumors that are heard are that the underground is arming itself again, since the androids can no longer restrain them. They call themselves the People's Squad, but are no less dangerous than the cartels. At the same time, it is simply impossible to send police to all 63 lines of the destroyed metro and 15 floors of slums. And yet, when patrolling them, you need to very carefully look for traces of changes in the situation. Jack asks if Hannah's conference is already over, what she's doing here. She asks if they have already received the test results that she asked for. Hugh says that the blood did indeed belong to Hellcat and Block, but there was nothing nearby except shrapnel. He says they probably managed to escape, but given the amount of blood they lost, someone definitely helped them. The girl is glad that they managed to get out. Now they need to solve the commander's problems. To the surprise of the police, Ice Block prevents the prosecutor's office from imprisoning him. Although, of course, a review of his case will take place only after Mark undergoes surgery. Ron tells Meg to say goodbye and return to them. The android accepts the order. He says he's glad to see Hannah here. She asks how he's doing and if it hasn't been fixed yet. Magnum says that they will do this already at the base. The girl asks whether his memory will be erased, but he says no, since this will lead to a decrease in combat effectiveness. She is sincerely happy about this. The android notices that her emotional indicators are off the charts. Is there really something wrong? Hannah says that he is leaving, and the commander is being put into surgery. She will be left completely alone. The android, based on Thompson's behavior patterns, says that Mark will say something like that he will be quickly discharged, so the girl needs to get on with the reports. She laughs and says Meg is right. That's probably what he would have said. At this moment, Mag is called by members of his squad. He says that it is time for him to go. She says that she will wait for the meeting. The doctor in the ward asks what Detective Thompson's mood is now. He says that he is normal. Then the doctor says that as planned, they will take him to surgery in 10 minutes. The detective only asks what the chance of success is. The man says that, to be honest, the chance of success is 20%. The doctor says that he will try to do everything so that he can see his loved ones again. Mark looks at the light and says that now he can actually see his wife and daughter better. Hannah sits by Leah Boehm's bedside in the ward and joyfully watches as she successfully wakes up from her injury. Population dissatisfaction with the rejection of Aparignola electricity is beginning to increase as prices and tariffs for electricity have increased. More people are speaking out against the closure of the power station, with Skycaston saying they will take responsibility for its closure. The head of the company claims that he will make every effort to develop safe and environmentally friendly aperignal energy. The use of aperignal particles for genetic modification is recognized as legal. Some modified man says that everyone sold the most expensive thing they had, without even realizing what it was, and now they are happy, holding 30 pieces of silver in their hands. Some doors open, there are many bodies with red eyes. A voice says that the time has come for the dead to rise and come to meet the living. The graves open.